Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Maxi Tyken, Michael Kahn, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Bo Snail, Samson, Maris, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Maria Nealand, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'm going to hand over to whoever is in Google and Discord so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
So that happened quite. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you finish.
Well, I was just going to say that I forgot about that, but that was pretty interesting for a while, and then yeah. So it was a pretty good night actually.
Right, because QE, Betty, and I were talking about moderating Geo, and I did that yesterday. I told them about it. I want him to be a moderator because it seems like he can contribute to the team to help keep it on track.
Right. He seems like pretty level-headed guy.
Yeah, like there's gonna be a hierarchy change happening soon. I just don't want to do it now while Betty's away because I don't want people complaining while Betty's away. But it's probably gonna only be a particular side complaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not good.
We'll wait for Betty to...
Which side's complaining?
No, I'm not saying anything.
Well, typically
I just want Betty to have a nice vacation before I make some changes that are gonna come up.
Sure, but typically it's fairly even, right? You get equal amounts of moans from globe believers and flat earthers alike, right? Or if you're saying there's more from one side, that's slightly concerning to hear.
Well, I don't want to go into it. Let's just say that. It's not exactly what you think it is.
Right, but if I rephrase it slightly differently and ask you the same question, will you tell me?
Oh, okay. When it comes to like what you're talking about, yeah, there's obviously complaints from like both sides.
I'll take that as a no.
Just ask him, Nathan.
I did. I asked him, who's complaining more? He said, I don't want to
No,
say.
rephrase it.
Well, no, I'm not going to.
Well, the way,
Okay.
from the angle you were coming at, it was like, it's usually always like both and stuff like that. It's always
Well,
been like both.
That's where a lot of people forget about the job Righteous has when they complain about him trying to keep the balance like he has for the last couple of years. Hard job.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna be around to do that then, like as much as I used to, because I'm gonna be getting really busy, and because of that, I'm gonna have to like give dominance to the FE side, because otherwise they're gonna be bickering back and forth. So I can't have that among the moderation team. So that's what I wanted to discuss. Like the baller mods are getting phased out.
We are in the
'Cause
minority after all. You know, it seems.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, Nathan. Go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing. Go ahead.
Because I can't have, when it's bickering amongst like people under the mods, yeah, that's normal, right? Because that's a server. But when it's among the mods, they can't be that, right? So there's got to be somebody that takes charge, and the FE side's going to have to be on top of the mods, and they're going to have the final say, right? Because when it comes to the like objective truth, when it comes to like the main part, we're in the objective truth, right?
Are
So,
we? I don't know. Are we? You tell me. What are we in?
well, I'm saying we're like the main thing, the no curvature part, right? When it comes to like other things, yeah, there's people on our side on all kinds of things, right? There, some agree with certain things and other agree with other things, but when it comes to like the main thing, we hold the objective truth, right?
Yes, Earth is flat.
Yeah,
Good
like
morning.
you know, good morning.
Hey, John. Hey, 10th.
Like some people don't agree in the dome. Some people may not agree on like the
Hold on.
overall
Unless we say hello to
edges and-
10th, this conversation's over because of audio chaos now. Hey, 10th.
Hello. What did I do?
It caused audio
gotta go
chaos
on
with your
mute.
mic wide open until you got a reply. So therefore, the conversation was effectively over. So yeah.
Oh, I was gonna chime in. I'm sorry.
I know, but I've tried to tell you. The moment you open your mic, audio chaos ensues unless you are actually talking.
Really, I switched my headset with got a new mic the last two shows. You haven't said a word. Now it happens again today.
It's just one of those. I'd rather you knew that when your mic's open, if you're not talking, it's causing chaos.
All right. Well, I was going to talk, but I was being patient. I'll come back when I'm ready.
I don't know if that gap's good enough for Righteous Forces actually rounded out though, so you might be might be called upon to speak immediately. Are you done, Righteous? Was there anything else to add? I'm really sorry.
No, that was pretty good.
Sorry, 10th. I didn't mean to have you join and immediately start having a go at you. That's really bad on my part. I'm sorry.
I had no clue. I don't take it personal. No, I just came in and I heard objective and subjective. So I feel the Earth is round is subjective. I can prove the Earth is round is objective. Well, so far they haven't proved anything, so they're just feeling it.
Okay.
You measure it flat. Measurements are objective.
Which bit's flat? Measurements are objective. I've got. Back off your mic just a couple of inches.
Oh, sorry. I said measurements are of it flat. Measurements are objective.
Gotcha. Yeah. You can't say it's... That's probably why they've wangled certain quasi measurements, if you like. So when they're measuring the equator, they're not. But they're measuring something. And therefore they can say, look, it's a measurement, right? How can you argue? We've measured it. Oh, I mean, obviously, notwithstanding the fact that we've debunked R. But prior to that, they can say, we've got something we can measure. But then they'll take you into the weeds of something else. Measuring dip angles, measuring shadows, all that sort of stuff. It's smoke and mirrors, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, the shadow measurements, they admit that there's a 0.5 deviation from straight within a localized area. Then they try to say that all of them are parallel. Like, you just said there's a 0.5 deviation,
Yeah, they've really got no concern with double speaking in the same breath, have they?
I mean, half a degree is pretty serious over a foot. You may not notice it, but the further degree, distance you travel, the more deviation you would notice. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It's much like corpuscular rays versus parallel sunlight. They need parallel sunlight, but we see corpuscular rays. We see diverging rays. So they'll say, well, they're parallel. They're close to parallel. They're almost parallel. No, you need them to be parallel. And based on your distance to your sun in the heliocentric model, it's going to be one beam. One beam over all that 93 million miles can hit the Earth all at once. illuminate the whole surface evenly. But that's not happening because we got sunspots, hot spots.
So your
So they're subjective.
I was going to say your sextant evidence has triggered a load of idiot fundies. I don't know if you'd realise this.
No,
So-
I haven't.
Yeah.
Other than that one guy.
No, there's been a couple of others that have made videos, but they're just idiotic. In other words, they don't really know what they're talking about. And when they present their evidence, they show all of these measurements with 90-degree angles on a sphere. And you're like, yeah. Unfortunately, though, when you're creating those three positions to get your fix, all of them are considered at the same altitude, area of equal elevation. So, no. But each of them are being depicted when they do their bastardization of what a sextant does, with a 90-degree at each position on the ball. You're like, no, nobody's doing that. They're just using the actual measurement that each of your little men on your little sphere is going to show as having a 90-degree to the horizon, because each of them and every one of them has. But when you triangulate, you consider each of those positions on a level plane. So, no, they don't consider the one up the hill on a sphere and the other even further over on a hill on a sphere, because it wouldn't work. But yeah, like I say, you've triggered a few idiots.
You know, it's going to trigger a lot of them until they figure out that the nautical almanac is already hardwired from the center of the Earth. So no matter what you're doing from the surface of the Earth, the measurements are from the center of the Earth to the center of the sun, center of the Earth to the center of the moon, and certain other luminaries are that way already in the nautical almanac. So when they say sunlight has to come in parallel for the sextant to work, they're not kidding, because the angle from the center of a presupposed Earth has to is where the measurements taken from. So it doesn't matter what happens on the curved surface, because two lines can't meet straight on the curved surface, but they do in a fictitious radius of a two-dimensional circle drawing that they show. So really, all you got to say is, all right, so you need sunlight to be parallel for the sextant to work on a globe version of how a sextant works. They go, oh, absolutely. Great, the sunlight is not parallel. The whole thing dies right there. We don't even have to go any further. We don't need circle of equal altitude. We don't need anything. We just have to show the sunlight is not parallel.
Also, you need a non-refracted geometric horizon with parallel rays on a sphere.
I love that.
That's the assumption. A non-refracted geometric horizon. That the minute they said refracted, they invalidated every sextant, every theodolite.
Yeah, if they're going to use refraction for all their other comebacks, they have to use it for the sextant, and when they do, well, it's not going to work.
Is there any way to turn your mic down, John? Is there any functionality to do that? God, I wish G Plus had an ability to turn guests' volumes up and down.
So now you should be going on mute now, 10th man, because I hear it now too.
I was on mute, and I was hearing it when John was speaking, so it isn't just me. I was hearing that sound.
I wasn't saying, I was talking to John. I was saying, can you turn your mic down a bit? He's overloading his mic. The problem with having this room beautifully treated like a studio is I can hear every little flaw, like really clearly, which is good because it means that during the pre-show when we're talking about stuff like this, I can make sure that the production quality is that little bit higher without these discussions on the live show. You just have to not take it personally.
Hey,
I'm
Nathan,
using my.
oh, go on, John.
Go on, John.
I said I'm using my phone, so like I'm trying to angle my arm. Is that about right here?
Maybe just speak a bit quieter. Just overloading the clip in the mic, that's all. You got a burly voice.
Says I got a loud voice.
Yeah, you got a burly voice.
Nathan, I got a website. If you click on it in Master B, it takes you to an animation. And the animation is from the sun, 93 million miles, how their light reaches Earth in their model.
Okay, I'm just loading it up.
Yeah, once you load it up, wait until it fully loads, and then you could increase the screen size And if you wanted to go to the Earth, hit Earth, and it'll just take you on the journey to Earth. And you want to go back to the sun, hit sun, and just watch the graphics. I'm not seeing what you're doing, so go ahead and
It's
comment
just
if
playing.
you do it.
It's just playing. Okay, so if I then do it the other way around, so this is showing the scale of Earth in the heliocentric system on this one line. You can't even show it depicted with multiple parallel lines. It's just one. I love it. And then we go, all the way out. Yeah, it's a very, 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 very long way away in the heliocentric system now, isn't it? And the sun is absolutely stonking enormous, isn't it? Amazing what kind of crap they came up with.
Well, now think about this. And maybe we can break it down a little bit, because it's what's my next thing I want to go on to from some of these clues. The story of Eratosthenes is that he assumed a couple of things. One, he assumed the Earth was a sphere. The other, he assumed light was coming in parallel because the sun is at such a great distance. So here we go. So he's got to assume those things, and then he knows that in the March 21st, at one time each year, that sun's going to be over that well in Cyan, directly over it, so it's not going to cast a shadow. He says, I wonder what it is in Alexandria where I live, because if it's on the sphere, the shadow will be cast. So now the stadia, the way that they determine miles or kilometers, is best figured out, because no one really knows, as Brian has said. I read one where it's 0.16 per whatever mile, but basically close to 500 miles is what most people have said from my research. So whether it's 400, 500, it really doesn't matter. Then the story says that it's close, and he went to Alexandria and measured. Well, how can on the same day he can walk 400 miles? I mean, he didn't, maybe he had a horse. Well, how can on one day he go 400 miles? So the whole story kind of breaks down, like, how did he know what it was in Alexandria? Who measured it there pre-cell phones and tin cans with strings that could reach that far? So the whole point is,
fax machines.
Did he wait? Did he wait a year later and on the same day just go to Alexandria? Well, that's never part of the story. The story varies so much that it has to be made up because it's not consistent. So some say, it's close, and he walked there. Well, he can't walk to Alexandria from Cyan. It's too far on the same day and catch that same phenomena. So did he wait a year later and on the same day just happened to be there at the same time and say, well, I know down there because I was there last year, it's over the well, so over here. Well, it doesn't say that anywhere in the story. And so then you got the variations in between. But the whole point is, he thinks the shadow is cast by the curvature of the Earth in Alexandria because the light is coming in parallel. And the surface of the Earth being curved is what's causing the shadow in Alexandria because it's directly overhead in Cyan. All right, well, that's assuming light comes in parallel and you go to the center of the Earth and do your little thing and get your 7 degrees or 7.2 degrees. That's 1/50th of 300, there's 50 of those in 360 degrees. And there you got your sphere of Earth with a 3959 radius. So that's how they did it. But they're doing that on a piece of paper with a two-dimensional circle. Now, in reality, if the Earth is curved, then every shadow that we have is caused by curvature, not the sunlight, because sunlight's coming in parallel. If you follow my thinking.
Yeah. I'm glad you're
so
explaining
then, at 8 inches per mile square, and the geometric limitations of Earth curve, the horizon, can we backward engineer a shadow of you standing in a park and having the sun at noon over your head, and then an hour later it should be 15 degrees further, right?
Right.
So is there curvature? Is there curvature that caused your shadow? That's, let's say you're a 6-foot man and your shadow, because of the way the sun is now, not directly over your head, is that curvature matching your shadow?
Well, you'd only be asking that question if you're presupposing it in the first place, which is the bit you missed off the story. The assumption
Exactly.
it's already
No,
there
I
in
said
place.
he presupposed it.
Yep, that's it.
I
I
said
would
he
suggest that all
presupposed it.
three of us make this point over the top of each other. Who wants to make it? Go ahead.
Well, I said he presupposed two things. I don't know why you.
Me moaning at Neil. Feel free to continue.
No, they
Exactly.
presuppose.
I just want
I
to
thought-
say that whole story is bullcrap from the beginning. From the first time I heard it, it's laughable.
Welcome to the Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Father of a Stolen Child, Neil, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hey, good morning.
Good afternoon, everyone.
How's it going?
It's going well. Nobody's complaining, or at least not me. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
That's nonsense.
Hello, guys.
Hey, Arwin.
Good afternoon.
So after suggesting that you fiddle with your gain on your mic the other day, I did the same to mine, and I think I've broken the pot. I think I've broken the game pot. Now it's distorting. Wonderful. Now I've got to buy a new mic, which I haven't got enough money to do. Smash the PayPal link. Anyway, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon? We've had nonsense. Anyone actually want to claim that we've got evidence of it, though? Earth curve is the main thing we're talking about here. That's the main matter in this debate.
Well, the horizon is not geometric, but you can still think of it as obstructing things from view, though.
What do you mean?
Morning. How's it going? Good.
No complaints? Everything's good? Okay, well, moving on. Axial rotation. Any evidence thereof? Axial rotation of the Earth-based variety.
Need a radius for that.
When I ride my 10-speed.
Of the Earth-based variety.
I ride my 10 speed on the Earth.
I'd be
Axial
happy
rotation.
if they had evidence.
Go on, John.
I would be happy if they had evidence of an axis.
Yeah, they're going to need an R value for that. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
Well,
You
you
can
need a
derive
ball
it
for
from
radius.
celestials. You can derive it from the celestials.
Derive it?
Yeah. Equator length.
Yeah, when
Calculate it.
I pummeled that guy the other day based on it, I heard you trying to jump in at the beginning. Were you trying to support the guy?
Yes.
I thought so. That's why I cut you off. I thought, Arwin, if he gets involved here, right, the guy will have a much better chance of dragging this out a longer time. And it dragged out long enough as it was.
Right. So yeah, when I get in and I hear like that's going for well, then I'm not gonna ball win it up because yeah, that's just gonna make you very agitated.
What's him getting support from you as you argue their nonsensical imaginary line being measured? Oh, what my bad, derived, right, Arwin?
Yes. Yes, it's not presupposed at first. That comes afterward.
I'm glad I can summarise that without having to decipher what you mean. Arwin's saying that you go out and you take these, let's put them in quotes, air quotes, measurements, right? But the person taking those measurements, they don't know that you're going to take the data, presuppose a sphere, and impose an arbitrary line around it, because that's going to be done after, right? So because the people taking the measurements aren't assuming R, it's the person after the measurements have been done that's going to insert the presupposition. Therefore, it's not a presupposition. No, wrong, Arwin. Very wrong.
It's more like a post supposition.
No, it's definitely still a presupposition. Just utilising data acquired by people who didn't know what you were going to do with it to make a presuppositional statement that Earth's a sphere based on your derivation of a line on the ground from the movement of the sun averaged. Yeah, that's just not going to happen, Arwin. It's still a presupposition, I'm afraid. Nice try, though.
Yeah, but it comes later. I understand what he's saying.
Right.
You don't
So
do it first. You do it later.
but it fits, it all fits, right? So if you do it like that, then at the same time you can support it by pointing out that the horizon is not geometric perhaps, but it still conceals things behind it. And if you combine that all with gravity that nobody knows what it exactly is, but it still does things in their model of atmosphere and everything, yeah, then it all just works out. It's fine.
So one of my newest moderators, Paula, she asked to post a link and I've just never bothered to take the spanner off her because I'm more than happy to have her as a moderator. Paula, whatever you want to do. There are no rules. You're a moderator because I know you know what to do. So I don't care what you do. Literally, I don't care. If you want to ban somebody, just ban them. Just thought I'd say that to Paula in the chat. Any evidence, any scientific evidence of gravity?
As soon as we know what it is, as soon as we discovered what it is, yes, I'm pretty sure there could be scientific evidence for it.
Okay, what's that then?
But we don't know yet.
So that's an appeal to the future fallacy.
I knew it.
Anyone else, maybe from Discord? Any scientific evidence of gravity? Fine. Statement to follow up. There is no scientific evidence of anything related to being on a sphere, gravity or otherwise.
How about mathematical evidence? I'd be happy with that at this point.
Well, certain things can, of course, be measured if they exist. But unfortunately, R values and geometric horizons do not exist in physical reality, therefore cannot be measured to give you some sort of physical evidence within maths, which is presumably where you're angling for physicality and evidence to be tied to maths, right?
Yeah, like a M2 value and Newtonian, M1 and Einsteinian. Yeah.
That's one of my favourite Black Swan segue debunks. So, when they say gravity as a mass attracting mass, it's like, where'd you get the centre of M1? Black Swan. End of that argument, right? That's epic. They have to describe to them their own nonsense about how gravity works in pseudo-force space, or how it's 106 years out of date as mass attracting mass. You just point out there and go, that's the end of the argument. It's the same with axial rotation. It's like you spend all this time learning how to argue about axial rotation and Coriolis deviation and deflection at 15 degrees an hour. And then you just realise that, I don't need any of that. Where'd you get the radius value? You haven't got it. We've debunked it. Oh, well, that's the end of that assertion. If you're new listening, and you don't understand or appreciate the devastating and awesome power of the Black Swan, look into it. There's plenty of videos been made about it. Some of them incredibly succinct and concise in terms of how it works and how it debunks the sphere permanently. Like, there's no going back once you appreciate it. Shout out to this is a new one. One fodder unit. One fodder unit? Okay. It says, by pot, continue to slaying scientism zealotry. Have I read that correctly? By pot? Does he mean by marijuana? Are you punting for business here? Right. What's going on? Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Continue slaying scientism zealotry. Yes, that bit I definitely understand and appreciate. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. One fodder unit. What a screen name. I love it.
Yeah, that way you can get high, but not into space.
This show does not condone drug use of any kind. Thank you anyway for the super chat. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Negative.
Somebody in my chat today was complaining again about how the second law of thermodynamics only applies to isolated systems, which don't exist.
Okay.
And it was like...
Did you address that, Arwin? And if so, how did you address it?
Of course I addressed that in
How
full.
did you address it?
Just... But even if you don't know the details, then even just basic critical thought would blatantly show how that's a paradoxical, the entire reasoning of that. Because how can something become a natural law, which means that there's no exceptions to it in physical reality? Then how could it only apply to something that doesn't exist, that only exists in conceptions? How could it ever become a natural law? But the troll guy held on to it for his life until he got banned, of course.
Okay, can I cover that and pull it apart a bit? Anybody else got any comment before I do? No? Fine. So, ideal gases and isolated systems do not exist in nature. Therefore, the second law of thermodynamics doesn't apply to the gases. Wrong. And I'll explain how. All laws of nature do is describe things. They are descriptions. So, descriptions of what? Things that occur always. Now, to make those descriptions more palatable, digestible, understandable, they are simplified for the sake of description. Now, the simplified descriptions include hypothetical or non-existent things. Ideal gases being one of them. There is no ideal gas. But to describe something that occurs always in nature, you simplify the process and describe it with an ideal gas. Ergo, a description of an entropy increase with an ideal gas can be described verbally and then demonstrated with bromine. The effect that's being described occurs always and can easily be demonstrated. The description of that effect is the law of nature. The description of what occurs always. Simplifying it to make it understandable with things like isolated systems and ideal gases doesn't change that those simplified descriptions are detailing something that occurs always. So to say that the simplified abstract words used are abstract words, therefore the thing doesn't occur always, is non sequitur. Laws of nature are descriptions of things occurring always. So to say because there's something abstract within the description, it makes the overall description false is a fallacy of composition. To say that something
What
that is
does
true of part of the description is true of the whole, i.e. there's a hypothetical part of the description, therefore the whole description is incorrect, is a fallacy of composition. Any more?
Right.
Any more for any
What
more?
does isolated system mean in that description? Because aren't we in an isolated system if we're contained? Like
No,
we're
you're in a
isolated in
no.
the system.
No. Closed means that energy can still go in and out of the system, not matter. Yeah? So, an isolated system, nothing goes in or out at all. But there's no systems like that in nature. There's closed systems and there's open systems, but there's no isolated systems where there's no energy transfer. There's only systems that are closed where there's no matter getting in and out.
So energy can transfer out of the side of the container that we're in?
What, matter? You don't.
No, he asked energy.
Did you
That's
say
a good
energy?
point, though. How do we know for sure that this isn't an isolated system?
Because I'm getting really hot. Because I'm hot. That's why. There's energy coming into this system from externally, as far as I can tell. The sun is a massive entropy generator.
But how do you know it is outside of the container?
Yeah, you've got me there. I don't.
Exactly.
However, within what we can observe within the nature that we do experience, hence law of nature, there are no isolated systems.
Right. Everything within the container is all closed system based, right? That
Correct.
makes sense.
So it's the same sort of segue from your flat Earth perspective as somebody asking me, well, why would space be fake? Surely it's just space outside of the container. Like, all right, so you're a globe believer who's accepted we must have containment to have gas pressure, but you don't want to relinquish space, you just want to think it's beyond some flap you can open. Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth? This thing on?
Nothing. Magnetics doesn't support it. Any molten activity doesn't support it. Digging down doesn't support it. It's the most unsupported science fiction concept that is involved in the heliocentric system.
But with the best story that goes along it. I'm not going to detail the story of Thea right now, but it is a pretty good story, wouldn't you agree?
Well, it is interesting. It's like a story of big ball-shaped titans, isn't it? That's kind of how they made that. A clash of titans, and then everything changed, and then, ooh, now we're here.
Amazing, isn't it? Are we done with housekeeping? Did we cover everything?
Did we get gas pressure without a container yet?
No, we didn't. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Yeah, the
You'll need
second
two
law of
containers.
thermodynamics not applying to nature.
Right, I
Sorry.
had 2 containers.
Yeah, that's what we find. For them to demonstrate it, they need 2 containers.
Well, that's unfortunate. Had a giant super chat from Lost Cat FE. Right, I'm going to do my damnedest to read this off my small monitor. Let's bring it up on the big one so people can see how badly I bosh this out. I drove around my block and came to the exact same spot. Now my block is a sphere too. It won't be too long before dinosaurs are ripping up my grass again. Why did I ever believe this kind of crap? Dinosaur sex must have been too weird to even talk about. And yet here I am talking about it off a super chat, Lost Cat Effie. I really appreciate the super chat. Thank you very much. $50. Wow. Thank you very much.
That's a good point. How did Tyrannosaurus rexes actually procreate?
Meanwhile, coming up on Flat Earth Debate, more Flat Earth Debate.
No, I agree. How do we believe all of this? I mean, we were taught it in school and we just believed it.
I just tell the lie often, all the usual stuff. It's a long time since somebody's asked me that question. Subliminally plant all of these things into everyday life so you don't notice. Reinforce the lie all the time. Plant the lie deep and hard when you're young. What else can I give you as the list for explanations for that, Neil? I don't know. That's about it. Anybody else got anything to add to that?
Yeah, humans are just programmable people. Like, it's all the time. We live on routine. So if you get told something 4 or 5 times, like Nathan was just saying, it becomes your life. This is why they make a character out of you, and you have cliques and everything in school, and yeah, you got to choose. But you're only given so many options to what they want you to look at. That's how the world works.
Yeah, but I was fascinated with dinosaurs as a kid. I loved it. Go to the Museum of Natural History to see the bones, to find out that they're fake.
That's the
Well,
point.
that's how
Excited
school
children.
works, doesn't it? You get a multiple choice question, and then there's only wrong answers, but you learn which wrong answer to pick in order to get through it.
You know, I hope it's okay to say this. It's like the conversation I was having with Jedi the other day about genders and stuff, and I don't need to go into the whole topic about that, but how it works. All it takes is them saying, this is what goes on in the system in your world today, right? And there's this many genders. And then what happens is the friends, just like your favorite color, go, well, what's what's your gender? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? And it spreads to the children. So all they have to do is say one thing in school. We look at them like their authority, and that's the end of it.
The end of it or the beginning of it?
Well, the end of it, I think, when you first,
Yeah.
literally a fresh little sponge, if you want to think of kids' brains as like a sponge, when those connections are made, when those neural connections are made, they're the only thing they've got to build on. You know, when I use my example of a guy who's trying to cross a ravine, in terms of describing how neural pathways are created. You throw the rope across the ravine, you climb across the rope, it's very shaky, but then when you throw it across to go back, you've got 2 ropes and it's much easier. And the more times you throw the rope across the ravine, in other words, the more times you think about something and do something, the more it's going to be a strong bridge or a strong neural connection. Well, for a child, it's that first rope across the ravine. That's their only route, that's their only path, and it's the only thing to build upon. So once it's been thrown across that ravine and put in there as their mental pathway that they're going to build upon, that's it. It's cemented in their being for the rest of their natural born life, potentially. You do have to, however, reinforce that lie frequently. But, like I say, once that pathway's been built, it can only be made stronger. And to break it is very, very difficult. You know, chopping down that very, very well-made bridge that's a child's idea of where their reality is hard to chop down. You know?
You know,
So-
just to
so
make an
that's great,
example,
guys.
Jedi
Hey, Adam.
children come over and they were teaching rotation in school still, by which way your drains spin. This is the nonsense that's going on in our school systems. And then the kids come home and they tell you, look what I've learned. And then you're like, wait a minute, this is all wrong. But if you don't talk
The bit-
about it with your children, you can't fix it.
We'll
the
cover
bit
that.
police state here is when you have that sort of thing. But those bridges, as Nathan's describing, are built to the point where a grown person, grown biological male, believes that if he has an operation, he'll be able to breastfeed his child. Those bridges can be so false. By the time they've realized how false their bridges, they're already affecting another human being. They're the concerns I have with these sorts of things. That
Right, like a pyramid scheme.
you do what you want to yourself. You know, it's up to you. It's your right. I'd support you in that. But
There are
Well,
instances
then-
of
Sorry,
male.
I didn't
Hold
talk
on.
about that.
This is totally
no,
off
no,
topic.
that's galactorrhea. It is not the same as breast milk. Very, very different. It's just caused by obscene amounts of hormones, which cause breast swelling and secretion. It is not breast milk.
Now,
It's true though.
hold on. So I had a first-hand account from Ukdina Walker about men breastfeeding in times of very severe droughts. Well,
Yeah, I suppose if you strap a couple of water bottles to your chest, you could do it.
No, men lactating. I've had somebody give me a first-hand account of that.
Nah.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you what I've been told. I'm not saying I'm claiming it.
You get with estrogenization, you get breast tissue forming and that, but you're not going to get all the ducting and everything forming. You're not going to get the production of milk. You'll get some bits and bobs which may, in a vague. Remember that the first and primarily the breast milk doesn't even pharmacologically stimulated to be produced until you've had a child. There's no signals for the milk.
Good point.
Yeah, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. You may be able to ingest hormones and get, like I say, what's called galactorrhea in a man, which is what's, but it's not breast milk. Don't pretend it's breast milk. It's man tit sweat.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Gross.
I know, but that's what it is, isn't it? And that's where you are harming another individual then, when you're trying to tell them that this is the nutrition as designed, and you're only fooling yourself. That bridge does not exist.
Okay.
Could it be considered half and half?
Half and
No.
half.
Is it? We don't call it half and half here. We call it semi-skimmed.
I'm
God,
guessing you saw that recent. I'm guessing you saw that recent footage of a guy.
Go on.
I'm guessing you saw that recent footage of a guy breastfeeding a baby. Anyone want to see that? It was fucked up.
Let's
You know-
that's the language. Can we change the subject? This is supposed to be flat Earth debate.
That is mine, but I'm looking it up, and I think Nathan might be right too, because it is possible for a hormone prolactin to actually happen in a male, and that's the only way it's possible for them to lactate. I'm
Okay,
just
let me-
looking
let
it
me-
up. I don't
That's
know.
exactly what I said, but it's not breast milk.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
fine.
that's about it.
I'll just
Yeah.
expand on the
What is-
circumstances. Hold on. Everyone's triggered on this, so I want to round it out. I'll expand on what was explained to me. We are talking about very, very elderly males, yeah, where they have a completely different hormone balance, and it's in extreme circumstances. And from what I understand from Adam now, there may be a biological process that is explainable in males of a very, very, very old age. I'm talking about something completely different. We're at cross purposes. I'm describing something a Native American has told me, who's, God, I really hope she's not listening, who's older, that's the word, thank God, came to me at the last moment. An older lady explained this to me from her first-hand experience, okay? So in those extreme circumstances, that's what I'm detailing. You're detailing something about pop culture and trans people. Am I wrong?
Right.
Right, that's definitely not the topic of this show.
It's
Neither
not
is...
what's happening, right? But it is possible, correct? Yeah.
I don't know how we went from Neil asking about how did I ever believe that we're on a sphere to us transitioning, no pun intended, to a discussion about men feeding babies. I mean, I've never seen such a wild segue.
Because on the cover of Sports Illustrated, you have a transgender first ever. That's how this whole thing started. At least that's what I hear from yesterday.
So what?
I have a
Okay, we're
question
on this
to Adam.
whether I like it or not. So what?
I have a
Well,
question
Nathan,
to
it's very
Adam.
confusing. Okay, it's not fair to women who work hard for what they want to accomplish.
Stop.
That they
Stop.
get knocked
Stop.
out.
Stop. Got a woman here. Stop. How many times have you read Sports Illustrated, Stacey?
I'm not reading
Never.
this month.
Hang
I
on.
know that much.
Yeah, but she might have tried to be a
Hello.
model.
Hello. Is your name Stacey?
I just got excited.
It could be.
Yeah, maybe it is. We talking about this world, you
Probably the funniest part.
That was epic. Sorry, let's just try that again. Stacey, when did you last read Sports Illustrated?
I have never.
This doesn't seem like a problem in the first instance, Neil. Anything else? You could
No.
stop reading Sports Illustrated, you realise, Neil.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying maybe Stacy wanted to be a model for that one day.
This is
And
not
here she
about
gets
Stacey.
bumped off by-
No, that's not what I asked her. This is not about Stacey.
Maybe the Earth prefers to be referred to as curved.
I could kiss you. Indeed, maybe the Earth identifies as curved. That's definitely true. However, in reality, Earth is flat. How did we ever believe it?
About Gaia
Yes.
now?
Go ahead, Darwin.
Now, I was actually going to bring it back into the subject and ask a medical question to Adam. So, about the man thing, I'm not even going to get into the details, but if you'd have like a fetal implant, could that somehow actually trigger the hormonal conditions to turn man boobs into proper breasts? Is that
I suppose if you took all of the female hormones, the prolactins, you could, like Frankenstein a man, yeah. But yeah, you could Frankenstein a man to get something. But again, remember what it's produced for. What the body's. Yeah, this is just nonsensical. Could you inflame and get something coming out of it? Yes. Does that mean that a man can breastfeed? No. We can mess around with him and cause side effects in him that are so freaky that it looks like he's producing breast milk. Yeah. But he'll lose so much else. All the hair will fall out of his legs and all, you know what I mean? It's a man is not designed to be like that, is he? He's designed to run on testosterone and not have that testosterone taken away. Yeah, and to then allow milk production to override all those other hormonal systems just to override that milk production one. So I suppose, yeah, in a Frankenstein way, I concede.
So back in the
That's why
definitely
they
not
have
saying anybody should
those
try
things
that.
that you wear over you that are boots for men that you can actually men if they want to be close like a woman is breastfeeding and with their baby they can actually do that but they can't do it themselves. Whatever it's going to be produced is not going to be enough.
The only time one of my children, when cuddling sweetly, tried to get my nipple in her mouth, I was absolutely horrified.
Snap. Yeah. Ah.
Oh my God, what are you doing? Paula, take this baby away from me quick. It wants to breastfeed from me.
It was the same with me, Nathan. When I wanted to breastfeed my children, my wife expressed it and I fed early on from a bottle. It was the only way as a man I could get involved, you know? I'd done my bit 9 months earlier, to be fair.
There's plenty to get involved with as a bloke. Other than breastfeeding, basically everything.
Who would want to? I seen my wife jump and push the baby away. They bit down so hard.
Yeah.
I would not want to breastfeed.
Hey, Adam, what kind of wine was in that bottle?
Okay, have we exhausted this topic?
Yeah, it's just a bit tit for tat for me.
Stop milking it.
It started with how did we be deceived, and we've moved on to pop culture topics. Sensitive pop culture topics, because for all I know, there might be somebody watching. I mean, I was going to segue it on, for comedic sake, onto Monty Python. So in Life of Brian, there's a scene where one of the guys wants to be a woman. He wants to be referred to as Loretta. And the people around him say, well, we'll fight for your right to be known as Loretta. And while at the time it was laughed at, now that is policy. Well, that's the world we live in. You know, it's a long time since the 70s. Well,
Yeah,
like with...
that was very early.
I'm nearly there,
programming.
Neil. Like with the COVID restrictions, this is the society you live in. Now, you might not like the way the Matrix is wired. Tough. That's just all I can say, tough. Now, that's not to say that I disagree with Adam. I actually completely agree with him, and I recognise his passion for the subject. But by the same token, I still accept my own fertility in the Matrix. You know? Now, does that mean that the people won't band together and change these things? I don't know. Maybe. But ultimately speaking, I'm trying desperately to segue it back onto how we manoeuvred into understanding these things to be the case, when they might not necessarily be so, certainly with the nature of reality. And that has been done through indoctrination. Brainwashing, if you will. Basically, putting false information into you and just reasserting it over and over and over and over again. That's all they do. That's what brainwashing is. So why have we accepted it? How was I so stupid, if I want to paraphrase what Neil's asking? Well, because you were brainwashed with this information from a very early age. Now, the other stuff that people are being brainwashed or their kids are brainwashed with, you can't fight against it. You know, my kids don't watch TV, they're home educated, but does that mean that they're not subject to everything else that's there as the reaffirming of the brainwashing that they're expected to have had by now? No, they're still subject to that, so they still take it in on the periphery. So no matter how much I fight against them making preconceived notions based on information that's told them as true when I know damn well it isn't, they're still going to make their own those notions concrete because they're subjected to the overwash, the re-washing of your brain, which is what we get as adults when we just see globes in Family Guy or, you know, stories at the cinema of going to space. That's just, you know, reaffirming the same brainwashing over and over and over again. The only advice I can give is don't subject yourself to it, then you won't be so concerned about it. And your concern, I'm going to use you as an example, Neil, your exasperated concern in this regard for this subject has a very negative effect on those around you. Either suddenly they're hearing it and seeing that you're reacting to it in a negative way, which has its own negative connotations on them, or they hear something that they may have assessed and decided as true that you're saying is wrong and brace against it, which is what Neil's actually experiencing. So all of those things, every one that I've just detailed, is very negative. Now, how do you solve that? Well, if you're not subject to it, you're not concerned by it. You know, my kid pointed out that I've got loads of moles all over my back today. I was like, I've never seen my back, really? She's like, yeah. And I asked my wife, I was like, have I got a really moly back? She's like, yeah. I was like, I never knew. And I thought, well, for the 40 years I've been on this earth, I didn't know and didn't care. It didn't affect my life. Not that moly back's going to affect anybody's life particularly. But what I'm saying is, to take it to an extreme, some people get very self-conscious about certain aspects of their body. But if you don't know, you don't care. Ignorance is actually bliss. Now, in terms of when you found out that something's a lie, just don't subject yourself to it over and over again intentionally. That's the only thing you can do. Now, it's the same advice you get if you're dealing with psychopathy or narcissists. No contact ever again. Just keep away from them. If you know they're liars, don't associate with them. Then they can't lie to you. Further to that, the people around them, if you're associating with them, they'll disseminate their lies to you by way of triangulation. And it's the same by tertiary information. I'm not saying detach yourself from all family and friends that are non-flat earthers, because they'll poison you too, but the example still stands. You're going to get subject to triangulation by people who are already brainwashed and don't want to relinquish that. So if you never mentioned that you realise the earth is obviously and observably flat, you didn't bring it up, you didn't watch any of the brainwashing, you go around to a family dinner, everyone around the table has been, and at some point it'll come up in the vernacular. It'll just be part of the language. So you can't completely disassociate yourself from everybody to not triangulate or not be triangulated in terms of the nonsense that you're being subjected to. You just can't do that. So then what do? We're back to what I said to, I don't want to get back onto the subject, but my address to Adam, which is, so what are you going to do? Do we rise up? Well, no, you can express your frustration, which is what Adam has done. But further to that, again, something with negative connotations, what can you actually do? Well, you could educate people, which is what effectively Adam has done. He's opened his mic. Go ahead, Adam.
Can I just add to that? Because, yeah, the bit you were talking about in terms of Indians, I found quite interesting. So I've looked that up. It's wicked, but it's just a paragraph I read. Human male breastfeeding is possible, but production of the hormone prolactin is necessary. Okay, so male breasts lack special lobules that are anatomically present in females' breasts. And this is the bit that relates to you. Male lactation has been seen during recovery from starvation, okay, not during starvation. And the postulation is that because the glands that produce the hormones are smaller than the liver, these glands recover from the rehydration quicker, start producing the hormones more, and the liver is much slower to catch up. So that's why you get this imbalance, which leads to galactorrhea.
Which bit did I get wrong? It's not in drought.
It's not. It's recovery from starvation that it can occur, not actually during the start. You may get a bit during as your liver packs up, But what they're saying is during the recovery phase, your liver recovers slower than the glands that are producing a lot of the hormones. Therefore, your body's not able to regulate and get everything back in balance. So you get these imbalances, of which one could cause galactorrhea in males.
Which, according to the person I spoke to, proved useful in certain circumstances for certain tribes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was
Well,
told.
I
I'm
don't
just
know how
telling you
it
what I
would
was
prove
told.
useful. You'd have to virtually kill somebody to get them to the point of dehydration and death, yeah, and then get them to recover, and then you might get a bit of special man milk. Might be the key, I think, because it depends on this imbalance and how that plays out within the individual.
I'll try it tomorrow. I'll let you know how I get on.
Please. I'm really intrigued. That's why I took it up. So,
hey, Chocolate.
That doesn't sound useful.
Chocolate, save us from this. Talk about flat Earth, please. I've
Good
tried
morning,
4
guys.
times.
It's that bad, huh?
I thought you might have brought some cookies to go with the milk, but
I literally, Chocolate, I just did a full-on 3.5-minute ramble, and the end response was to take it straight back onto man milk. I mean, literally, I tried.
The response was to with regard to what you said. The only way to deal with this is to go into it and look and have an informed opinion on what you're doing yourself and read it. And that's why I'm happy to go back and be prepared to change what I've been told. If there's something there new, I'm happy to discuss it. But from what I can see, the way you address misinformation is to become informed.
We're vigilant here. So that's typical of us in this particular group, if you want to put us in a group. We're all vigilant people. In other words, we want to know what the actual case is. We want to know what the facts of the matter are. Not what the rhetoric says. Not what we should believe. We want to know what's actually what. And unfortunately, that means that quite often, more often than not, we have to say we don't know. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just thinking the only segue I can use that will never get it back onto that subject again. So I talk about the sun and how I do not know what it is. I mean, Pete Shea was in our chat the other day, or yesterday, and saying, it's been so many years, you must be a shill because you'll never say what the sun is. I'm like, I don't know what it is. What do you want me to do, lie? He's like, yeah, well, it's Aristarchus. I'm like, oh, all right. So I could just make up any old shite and that would satisfy you that I'm not a shill. No, I don't know what it is, but that's wonderful. You know, that is the best bit. In fact, that's what I said to Eddie Bravo, who's chasing me down to try and get somebody on the show. And I'm not going to lie, it's not the first time that's happened. There's been several occasions where people of a higher profile than myself have contacted me and said, can you take apart this person? I'll get them on the show. And to date, it hasn't actually happened. The only time it did happen was by pure chance when DITRH asked me to do a similar thing. But the guy joined of his own volition, as far as I can tell. But there we go. It was like, Dirth was like, there's a big super chat. If you can get this guy on your show, I'll give you a big super chat. And he just happened to come on the show. I was like, yeah, I still want that super chat. I am poor. But anyway, my point was that Eddie Bravo's question to me was, gun to your head, what's the moon? And I was like, I don't know, but that's the best bit. It's a world of pure wonder now. For anybody that's got a childlike sense of wonder, finding this out is fantastic. For anybody that just likes to be grounded and know what's what and have all the explanations done and you don't have to do anything, it's the worst news ever. Because suddenly all the things you thought you knew aren't true anymore. And that's devastating to a lot of people. Half, I would say, 50% of the people react that way. Shout out to Helio Pabon, says, Flay Earth. I think he missed the T. Flat Earth. Thank you very much for the super chat.
My first reaction was horror, but, I kind of got my childlike sense of wonder back.
Yeah, that's it. I get that. That's why you're a very, very valuable guest. And I'm not saying that to put anybody else here down. But you've got that very cemented, and I've kept it there, hopefully, by asking you about it over and over again. You were slipping off that knife edge down the wrong side of the fence towards anti-flat Earth. Oh my God, this can't be the case. This is terrible. I went and woke my wife up and went, wow, it's amazing. Earth's flat. Because I was so excited about it.
So where do I fit in? because I said this before. I literally berated my brother and just kept bringing up NASA and this and that. How can everybody lie? You're telling me that everybody's in on this secret. You're out of your mind. We went to the moon. I hit him with everything in 2 weeks until I couldn't find any evidence of this sphere.
And that's the point that you asked the question. There would have been a point during those 2 weeks where you were in limbo on the knife edge I've just described. Well, at some point you slip off it, right? Well, you either slip down the fence on the flat earth side and then, in some instances, spend a long time looking through the fence, back through the fence at the globe side, going, "You're all in a nut house! Come on, look, you're being governed by complete nutters telling you lies." And they'll spit on you from the other side of the fence. It's true. The
Well, I
metaphor's
kind of
so
went on the other
accurate.
side of the fence for a while.
You slip down the other side of the fence, so you're right next to the fence. You can see the flat Earth side through the fence, but you're on the globe side still.
Yeah. There for I'd say about 2 years. Yeah, I was spitting on flat earthers. Yeah.
So back in my metaphor, when you're researching it in Neil's 2-week period, you sat on the top of a very fine tightrope, a knife edge, and you can clearly see on the other side, flat Earth. It's there. You're looking straight at it. And on the other side, the side you've come from, is the nut house with all the nutters. And when you slide down back to the globe side, you've already seen over the fence. That's why a lot of their arguments on the anti-flat Earth side are in contradiction of globe arguments, because they've stood on the knife edge at some point and seen how flat it is. So they've got to contradict the globe arguments. They've heard the flat Earth arguments. They spend a significant period of time effectively being brainwashed by us, and their cognitive dissonance takes them to arguments that debunk the globe just so they can argue with us against our debunking.
Well, I thought I was measuring curvature with the dip angle. I thought that measurement bound me to that sphere. When that was invalidated, it kind of all fell apart from there.
John, can I ask you a question? How you clung on to that? Because certainly back at the beginning of my journey, there were people who were pulling out Optra apps and going up mountains and showing these things as they maintained it. But through investigating, reading, looking, and just sentient thought, it became apparent. Even this is before Black Swan. That wasn't the case. Maybe I wasn't at the Black Swan stage where we could destroy it totally, but you could see that it wasn't anything physical. What it was, I didn't have a decent answer for back then, but I was quite happy to know that can't be the case. So why did you keep validating it? Why is it because you had to, or was there something that your brain was twisting to make you accept it? You see what I mean?
Well, I was coming from an atheistic background where I thought the only things that existed were the things you could measure, and they were physical. So when I would see the horizon, therefore it's physical within my paradigm. And when I could measure it, you could see farther as you go higher, therefore it's geometric. I never thought to measure the distance to the horizon.
But
I just never thought to.
Does the notion that the horizon would move back and forth, like every other day or every day or every hour, like did that not ever kind of take away the physicality assumption that you had with it?
Oh,
because
well,
I could never really, just speaking for myself, I could never really sit and think when I thought, oh, the horizon, that's where the curve starts. Like, to me, it always just seemed like what it is. It's just an apparent position. Like it looks certain a certain amount of miles away one day, and then like later on that day it could change. So to me, it just never struck me as something that could be physically blocking anything.
Well, before the Black Swan, refraction could bring it closer, and so could geographical obstruction. And within my paradigm, that's what I thought. but I thought without obstruction, there was
So you mean
a physicality to it.
even before the discussion, you were already thinking in the terms of refraction is probably doing something to that. Like even before getting into globe and flat Earth and all that. That's what you're saying.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I accepted that refraction was real. I understood, the idea behind 7/6R when you're bringing up stuff with respect to the horizon. Else I couldn't have been a glober.
That's weird because to me, like refraction was just like, well, at least back then it was just kind of, how they show you the pencil in the water. Oh, that's refraction. It's broken, right? I never really related that to the horizon and that being the start of the curve of the Earth. Like to me, it's just so many things that, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just the type that if it doesn't relate to me, I'm okay with just letting it go.
Yeah, because
well, now
I was just gonna say, Chocolate's question is post Black Swan. How'd you deal with the horizon moving? Well, pre Black Swan, to quote Rumpus, it's refracted because of its position with respect to the horizon. And what John's saying is, well, as long as with your elevation increasing, you've got it changing based on the fact that it is a geometric horizon, that makes perfect sense. So the horizon moving, well, yeah, it's dictated by the observer's height. So therefore, it moves when you go higher. Fine. And you know that the things that are coming back when they argue within the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator are refracted. Well, you know why, because their position with respect to the geometric horizon that should be blocking them but isn't. They're just refracted up with respect to the horizon. Again, using a geometric horizon. It's the reason Rumpus isn't allowed here anymore, because of that very statement. It's refracted because of its position with respect to the horizon. It's a statement that the horizon's geometric, it's got to be, you're drawing a tangent to it, and your dip angle measurement gives you R. And the thing that you're looking at, the target, is moving with respect to it. And you're just bending the light that it bends around the sphere at some assumed rate, 7/6R in standard form terrestrial refraction. And that all makes sense until the horizon's no longer geometric. Then it all fails.
correct.
Without a tangent point physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon, you cannot assert the geometry, you cannot obscure things with the horizon, and you cannot derive an R value from it to give you the maths to bend the light to move the horizon. The entire thing descends into a paradox upon rebuttal from anti-flat earthers, many of whom have slipped off that knife edge because of the Black Swan, and now tell us that the geometric position that they utilise with the tangent is actually refracted. In other words, their rebuttal debunks the globe claim, while they stare through the fence at us, at the flat earth we dwell atop.
Yeah, they pretty much say all the measurements we claimed in the past are invalid. That's how we explain this.
Exactly, and when I caught Rumpus in that very problem for them, that every single assertion that a physical geometric sphere edge blocked the bottom of the Isle of Man with a refracted value in feet and inches with respect to that geometric horizon, when I asked him if he refracted the horizon back at the Isle of Man, he said he did. And he lied. He can't have done. He required tangents and drew them in his maths. So he couldn't have refracted it. His maths wouldn't have worked. Therefore, he had to lie about it. And has been excluded from this debate forever because he's now just a liar, trying to lie to you about being on a globe. And when he does physical geometric assertions with horizons that are blocking things, he'll later lie and say they were refracted. Well, that's not tolerable. We're here for truth. We're vigilant. He's here for lies. He wants to con you into belief that you're on a sphere.
Yeah, that was enough for me. Like that made me climb back over the fence.
My advice is run away from the fence, he says while he runs a flat earth debate show and invites people in daily to discuss it. But run from the fence. Don't spend your time trying to convert the nutters in the nut house. Shockingly, if you've managed to escape a cult, is the best advice to go back to the compound walls, climb up and look over them and go, "Oi, the cult leader's a nutter. They're sending dicks to space. They're laughing at you." Or just go away from the compound, as far away as you possibly can. And the flyers...
That's what Leah Remini's doing.
Say again, Neil.
That's what Leah Remini's doing, the actress with that Scientology. She was caught up in it, and now she's trying to enlighten people. And they're going after her.
My wife doesn't often chime in on this subject, but she chimed in when it came to Scientology. We discussed it a few weeks ago for whatever reason. And her speculation was absolutely profound. In terms of how you would move away from a heliocentric system and leave that in a little pigeonhole, because you can't eradicate it completely, it's part of the history. How do you then segue that into a non-flat earth part of society that's just those guys over there? Well, she postulated that would be done with Scientology. So I point out to her, the reason this subject came out was to say that, what is Scientology? Well, it's heliocentrism. Just a very, very tiny offshoot. It's identical, basically. Scientology is just heliocentrism. Everything about it is based in heliocentrism. It's a heliocentric religion. Sun at centre, Earth moving around it, aliens. It's the same, almost identical currently, because you've got aliens in your narrative in the news. So what's the difference? Well, a few little bits of bobs about what will happen with the Archons, but other than that, it's the same bloody thing. The system's the same. Well, wouldn't that be useful if you're going to transition? Like in 1984, well, the stars could be close if we want them to be. It's not beyond our mathematicians. But when that transition happens, first you need to soften people up. That's what we're here for, in my opinion. And then eventually there's just a transition period that nobody notices. And then, we always knew it was flat. But that leaves you with a subcategory of society that are going to be pigeonholed as just the Scientologists. The nutters that think that we're moving around the sun. And that the black bit, when it's dark, is actually a vast area with people living in it, called aliens. Yeah, those are just the nutters that think we move around the sun.
Ah, that's pretty good, Nathan.
It's not me, that was my wife.
Well, what if heliocentrism actually serves a purpose, like keeping the nutters in the nut house kind of thing?
Nah, there's a lot of money and expense in terms of the brainwashing and keeping it part of the paradigm. And also, when you consider that, from what I can establish, the people we debate with have had interrogation training. Now, I didn't know what it was that they had until you stumble across it and find people that can do the same thing they do. And people who interrogate people, or polygraphers, I don't know the exact term for the person's career title, but people who operate polygraph are essentially the most skilled interrogators. And the training that they undergo and the techniques that they employ are basically identical to the tactics we experience in debate from our opponents when they are the upper echelons in terms of skill level of debaters. They're using interrogation and resistance to interrogation tactics in debate.
Yeah, they're masturbators.
What I'm saying is the people we deal with are skilled. I'm hinting at things that people can obviously expand on from, which I am definitely not going to verbalise. But the implication of what I'm saying is pretty clear. I'm not being subtle. My point is that there's efforts that are definitely being made to not only deal with any backlash from the brainwashing, but also maintain the brainwashing. That's very much prevalent and takes time, effort, expense to do all of that. So to say, well, maybe it just self-perpetuates or is of a benefit to keep the nutters here, it's like, I don't think so. Constant brainwashing of absolutely everybody, I don't see that as being beneficial to anybody other than somebody who wants control and power.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if people knew it was flat, would they test their boundaries? And would the universe be a better place if we left this area we're contained within?
I don't know. Why would you want to leave? I think we live in a fantastic place.
Well, I don't want to leave, but there are people who do.
Well, that's because of the programming of how it's not worth it, right? It's because of their messages about the Earth, where it comes from, what your place in it is, that would make you long for anything else but here. It's part of the trick.
Correct, Darwin.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think I disagree. I think it's something inherent in people that we want to, find out things.
Yeah, and Arwen's not disagreeing with that. He's saying that it's beneficial to prevent that, as opposed to talking about you as an individual with your human nature. The people that are putting this narrative out there, there's obvious benefits to them. namely keeping us all well under control.
Take their power, want our rights. They want all our rights to come from government.
Governmental.
Well,
Yeah.
by definition, rights can't come from government. That's a non sequitur. Liberty comes from government. Rights come from external source.
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day! Favorite football team of college. So Nathan, was that a mole or a mass on your back?
So any ballers? Any ballers?
The third nipple.
Come on, guys. Nathan, is anybody typing in Discord that's a baller we can invite? Just break to come.
We got to get that fisherman kid. Who's the kid that fished out that other guy? What's his name?
I don't know. I don't keep track of their names.
From Discord. The kid Ryan. Was it Ryan or was it the other guy? That was explaining how there's a certain way you get the chat skanks out.
Yeah, I think that was Ryan. Or it was Sink Cleanser. I forget which.
Start chumming, Neil.
No, it wasn't Sink Cleanser. I know Sink Cleanser's worse.
So I guess nobody in Discord that's wanting the ball.
Hey,
Just wanna chat about it.
I'm hearing that humming.
That could be me. I've buggered up my mic.
I'm waiting for someone from Discord to come out.
Yeah, I wouldn't fiddle too much with the gain control on your mic, Owen, because I've broken my. Oh, I told you earlier, didn't I?
Anti-flat earthers come out to play, eh?
And Nathan, did like the mic itself break, or is it because of the setup that got all?
I don't know. I've
jumbled
just
because of it.
What's happening is when I turn the pot to a certain position, i.e. almost nothing, anything at that level will create a load of background noise. In other words, I'll see the line dancing up and down with something going on in the mic. It's making a load of self noise, and I don't know why. So it happened just before the intro finished, so I quickly leant around the back of the mic, turned the gain up, and then turned it back down again, and it went away. But in other words, I think the pot has somehow got buggered up. Probably because I took it down, so I've made myself a cardboard mic mock-up of the mic that I want to buy. And I was like, I'll just see how it'll work, where I can position it, if it'll work, before I obviously invest in it. Because I'm just telling you this because I sent you a picture of it, and you were like, what the hell's that? I'm like, it's a cardboard mic, so I can mock it up and see how it will function. But to mock it up, I had to take the other mic down, and I just left it on the side. So there's a good chance that it's been used as a toy, or it's been messed with, or... I'm blaming my kids basically for my mic breaking because I didn't drop it, and now it seems to be actually broken. But there we go.
All right.
It's cheap though, isn't it? Blue Yeti is, I don't know, $80. It's not very expensive in the scheme of microphones. I mean, that's lasted a long time. Almost every. Go on.
Well, as long as they don't get glitchy, because But yeah, overall, when it doesn't get glitchy, there's nothing wrong with it, with the build of it. Then yeah, seemed to work just fine for a very long time.
And I think this would, if I hadn't have fiddled with it, if I hadn't have taken it off the boom stand and de-wired it and chucked it on the side, I think it'd probably still be functioning as it was. You know, it's just one of those things. I'm fiddling with it because I want to buy a new mic, and that's probably the thing that's broken it, playing around with it. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Nathan. Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Yo.
So, Brian, how's things?
Yeah, they're good. They're good. I didn't hear the show, so I just joined right now. I heard yesterday's show, all right. At the after show as well. Thanks for the good kind words.
Yeah, Neil was a dick. He was pretending like you were thick or something.
No, I was not. You better stop that.
No, I actually understand what Neil meant. It actually comes back to quantum eraser, because I would find I was coming to over the course of time a lot of the same kind of conclusions on something, or I might hit. I can't remember what was the term. It was to do with hydrostatic equilibrium. I remember having an argument with a guy online and stating that hydrostatic, right, means that it cannot, those words mean that it cannot apply to gas, because gas is not hydro and it's not static. So I remember not being able to convey. I remember conveying it in words, as in writing, but not being able to convey it in words. Let's just say as speaking, but or not being able to get around to conveying it or something like that. But there was many things like that. I remember that I wasn't able just to say or get out. So what it was is I started copying quantum eraser's let's just say model of conveyance, which is keeping it very simple. I used to, because a lot of bad, I'm sure we've all dealt with it a lot over the years, a lot of bad interactions with ballers. I used to try to cover too many bases, and I had too much complexity when I was trying to explain something instead of just keeping it simple. So now we just keep it simple. And if someone wants to know extra details, I have them, but I don't need to. So I technically copy quantum eraser as much as possible, because I was just complicating everything when I was trying to explain things. I don't know if I complicated that.
No, not at all. And just to be fair to Neil, it was him that started off that series of compliments, and he was complimenting you. I'm just pulling his leg. But yeah, absolutely. You know, you are a sharp cookie. You've got sharper. We all have. And, you know, from day one, Brian, subscribe today to Brian's Logic, by the way, is a very sharp cookie. You know, I'm not going to say this because I said it earlier about someone else, but, you know, you're all extremely valuable assets to what we as a group do here.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And you know, the truth is like that. There's things that Chocolate spots and will say, and things he'll look at that I wouldn't have done at all. There's even things like the Michio Kaku quote. I wouldn't even come to my mind to say that. You know, things like that. So we all have a part to play. Let's just say. You know, so. And the same with tent, like with the sextant, let's just say. I mean, the sextant is something that I might have looked into at some point, but I wouldn't have gone and done what tent did with it. So, you know, there you go. I mean, everyone has a part to play.
I'm just a yes man. Yes, Nathan.
Don't put yourself down,
No,
Neil.
you have a part to.
You often put in things that are quite profound. So don't put yourself down, Neil. Far from it. Just a bit less about the Nissan, then you'd be perfect.
What was that?
Just a little bit less about the Nissan. I said, then you'd be perfect.
Oh, my Nissan. Yeah, I got some issues with that. You want to hear about them?
Has Adam disappeared? Oh, he's still here. So what sparked that particular bit of passion earlier, Adam? Was it just Stacey's remarks? He's run away.
Often he's listening while he's walking, isn't he? Sometimes.
I think he was just lactose intolerant.
I was cheering him on. Go at him. Get him. Attack.
What was the remark?
Let's not worry about it. I'll tell you after
Don't
the show's
start it.
ended.
It's about breast milk.
Damn.
How men can produce breast milk.
Neil?
I bet you're glad you asked, Brian.
All right.
Now I know why Nathan was like, chocolate, please, something else. Now I know.
No, he was.
Now I
He
know.
was doing that, but you could sweeten it up with chocolate milk.
Oh my god.
Stop it. Let's talk about
Yesterday was bad. Listen.
homogenized.
Anyway, I wanted to ask you before the show, Nathan. How do you take your coffee?
I have cappuccino.
Accelerating.
I foam my milk to about 80 degrees.
So regular coffee. My
It's
wife bought
accelerating.
this stuff called my
Foam
wife
milk.
bought this stuff called Chobani. And
God.
it's so good. You gotta try it. If anybody takes half and half in their coffee like I used to, until this Chobani wound up in my fridge, whole new horizon has opened up.
Try the Chewbacca non-decaf flavor.
I'm sticking with the favorite. Lots of cream, lots of sugar.
I take
Try
my
this
coffee
Chobani.
accelerating as it's sitting on my table. Thank you.
It's sweetened cream and it's unbelievable.
Have you ever tried men's breast milking coffee? It's like Chanel, very expensive, difficult to get hold of.
Whoa, look at that. I got a thing. Gotta go. Jesus Christ.
Oh, I like coffee. Coffee's good.
You can get cat shit coffee.
Enhance the flavor.
Run out of beans today. Probably why I was so stroppy with everyone in the pre-show.
Speaking of coffee.
Go on.
Speaking of coffee, let's see what everyone could relate to the best ambiance for coffee. Mine is on my boat in the Pacific Ocean with the smell of the ocean in the morning. Those two go together great.
You don't want to hear mine.
Okay.
It goes with sitting on a throne.
So do you often sit on a throne, Neil?
When I have my coffee, I sit on a throne.
Oh, that
We know
throne.
you're the king of your house.
Let's
but
move
that's
on.
taking it too
Let's move on.
You go.
I'd just like to
Neil's got a
empathize
handle.
with Neil a little bit there before we move on. I'm with you, bro.
Neil's got a handle on it, though. Go on.
It could be a shitty conversation.
Well,
Thank
that
you.
turned out well.
That's another tick box I've got to tick in the YouTube disclaimer. Wonderful.
How about you?
Globies.
In the absence of globies, we're talking about coffee and thrones. Who'd ever thought that the globies would not come to a show to defend their club?
I recognize a pattern, though. If you stay on long enough, somehow they show in, and it becomes great.
They can only take so much, right? They're at breaking point towards the end.
Well, it's from my experience, is that their A team lost so bad, and their A team is no longer able to debate us, that the B, C, D teams are just like so frightened to come on the show.
Well, when you got some of them out there saying things like the definitions of words are meaningless, I mean, what do they have to hold on to?
You mean when a B team member hears an A team member say science doesn't prove things, and he says, "Wait a minute, I thought that's how we were going to prove our curved Earth."
That's how we were going to. And so we realized we don't have any of that damn science. So now we got to tell them, hey, you know that science we were talking about? That doesn't prove stuff. We was just joshing you.
Did they really say? Hold on a second. Did they really say the definitions of words have no definition, or the meaning of words have no meaning?
No. Ruhif, the definitions of words are meaningless.
That's correct.
And end quote.
Doesn't he understand what the conservation of momentum means? Avi's job, said Ruhif also.
What does the word meaningless
But the definition.
define that.
Hold on. The definition of a word is its meaning, and he said that's meaningless.
Yes.
Yeah.
The meanings of words are meaningless. Yes.
What a retard.
So after that sentence, he's completely negated any type of logic, any type of debate, anything. Like, what did you just say? If the definitions of words are meaningless, what did you just say?
Yeah, to be fair,
Nothing.
well, to be fair, we do need to give some context to the situations. So what's actually happened is my kids just strolled in.
That's what's actually happened?
No.
Definitions are bad for them because they can't define something the way they want to define it today and then define it the way they want to define it tomorrow. They can't change the meaning of a word to suit their narrative because they're in a situation where they're constantly having to change their story now. Because when you're an anti-flat earther, you can't stick to a globe rhetoric because that gets pulled apart by definitions alone. So you have to constantly change your story. So the only way to constantly change your story is use the same words but have a different meaning or define them in a different way.
Good point.
That's why you have to do that.
Well, a lot of times they'll use words whose definition are dependent on a word that they just denied the meaning of. You know, like they'll talk about the circumference when they'll, can't measure the radius.
How many times have they come here when we ask them to define something? What do they say? Oh, that's just semantics.
Yeah, so semantics being words and their meanings. Well, semantics, words and their meanings. Well, that's meaningless, isn't it? Words and their meanings, that's meaningless. Or to paraphrase, I was going to say to give it context, what's actually happened is somebody's lost an argument by having somebody define one of the words they've used, proving their point wrong. At that point, the definitions of words have no meaning.
Wasn't it? I might have the character from history wrong, but the claim character wasn't it Socrates? Was it Socrates who used to always define terms and definitions of words with his opponent before a debate?
Yeah, Socratic method.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I just wasn't sure. Yeah, I mean, what was the point of doing that?
If words didn't have meaning, there would be no point in hiring a lawyer. Why hire a lawyer? If words don't have meaning, then no matter what you say in a courtroom, right?
I object.
Yeah, exactly. There's,
meaningless.
I mean, how are you supposed to? Why did he do that? He did that because of people doing what Ruhif and others. It's catching on because other ballers are at it now. That's what they're doing. They're starting to catch on. Jose J.G. Gonzalez was trying it with Bev. Definitions don't matter. This kind of stuff. So this is where we're at. This is where we're at. So
it's just an admission, Brian, isn't it? It's just an admission of defeat. If they're going to get to the point after you've actually had a bit of a debate, as painful as it is with them, and they then recognise that they've contradicted themselves, that for the next play to be to descend into ridiculum, just leave it there at that point. It's just thanks that I'll take that as a victory. If that's your response now,
Exactly.
I'm certainly not gonna. I'm not gonna argue that words do have
Why
meaning.
would you argue? Because the words that you're going to use to argue apparently don't mean anything. So why would you argue? Oh, the word
I've done that.
meanings of words
I've done
mean
that
nothing?
before.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
I've done that in Jim Pan's server once, and they said that words didn't have meaning. And I just, every time they said anything, I said, well, that's meaningless. And I got kicked out. I've been kicked out of there twice, pretty quick.
So, just for the benefit of the audience, here we like to be hyper specific, define words, get our opponents to find the meanings of the things that they're saying, so that we can agree on the terms of discussion. If you say orange and I think you mean apple, we're going to have a problem if we're discussing what oranges do. So you have to agree on the meanings of the words that are being used to make a point. Now, as John rightly points out, if you are debating somebody who says semantics are meaningless, a contradiction in terms, you're dealing with a moron. You're dealing with somebody who's so stupid they're not worthy of your time. Now, Ruha fits in that category. The type of person that will justify a man going after another man's career because he doesn't understand the meaning of something, only to later say that meanings don't mean anything. It's pathetic. It's idiotic. And that's the tactics of globe belief. Meanwhile, on our side of the fence, we say, yeah, we want to be hyper-specific about what we claim and what it means, with thorough research and diligence done. Not, oh, well, it doesn't matter, it doesn't mean anything, it's just words. That's your globe-believing tact, not a flat earth tact.
If I may, what Adam said was really good because, and how you ended it, I think maybe you might want to change, Nathan. Those are anti-flat earther tactics because when they were globe believers, words did mean something until they realized the words took their position and put them in a corner in a major timeout because they couldn't use those words to prove their globe. So they became anti-flat earthers where words cannot mean anything because now they can live in their little, corner in their mind believing they're on a sphere as long as words don't mean anything, because as a glober they lost with those words.
Exactly, and at the point that you find your opponents pointed out that the very definition of the word you're using contradicts the point you're making, you'll say words and their meanings are meaningless.
Well, if you look at gravity, if we ask one of them to define gravity, they are now going to convolute relativity, general relativity, with a load of force nonsense that has nothing to do with it. I get this daily in comments on YouTube. That gravity is not defined as a force, but it is a force. All this absolute nonsense. And the reason they can convolute the two is because they are taking the word gravity and when they're asked for the definition of it, and they are convoluting the whole thing because the current definition of gravity is just an effect caused by the uneven distribution of mass curving spacetime. That is the current definition of gravity. So we ask them to define gravity, they come up with a load of nonsense, and they learned that they must have learned somehow that was the way to go about things. So what's next when we ask them for the definition of a radius? What's that going to mean?
Well, based on the standard we've been discussing, if you ask somebody to define radius and words and their meanings have no meaning, then the definition of a radius in itself has no meaning. And they're kind of saying that because they require dip angle measurements to a geometric horizon to acquire the radius, and they're telling us that that position that they measure is non-physical. So that's what an anti-flat earther will actually do, Brian.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are convoluting the word measurement for years, calling things that are only calculations measurements. So this is maybe something that's not new with these people. I mean, where is your radius value measurement for your globe Earth? And they'll give you a calculation. And now all they can give you is a calculation based on maths. Because even if you look into their history books, everyone that supposedly measured this supposed radius value that we found out they didn't, they all already had those calculations. But so they've been punting it before they were anti-flat earthers, even as globers, they were punting a calculation as a measurement for a long, long time.
Apart from
remember
Al-Biruni. The only
famous-
exception to that is Al-Biruni.
No,
Well,
he
there's Andrew
had,
Thomas,
he had
yeah.
the maths as well.
No,
Sorry,
he had,
thanks.
no.
There's Andrew Thomas, yeah.
No, he didn't. He had an assumption of a sphere, which he was going to go out. I'm going to go out and measure the sphere radius today. And the dip angle measurement to the physical geometric sphere edge horizon is what he measured. But he's still making a measurement. Now, that's not to say that, and this has been pointed out many times, well, what happens if he went back tomorrow and did the same exact thing? Wouldn't he get a completely different measurement, as the horizon would have moved to a different location, given it's non-physical? But within the story, he measures it and he gets it right, doesn't he? But he's measuring it in that story. Measuring the dip angle.
Well, hang on.
Just 1 second,
Go
sorry,
on, Brian.
I'll be quick. Eratosthenes had, like, if you look into that story, he had the maths before he ever did anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, so, and he came before Al-Biruni, so those maths were already present.
Yeah, it even says it.
He had the pre-maths, man.
Yeah, and Al-Biruni even, and they even state that Al-Biruni referred to Pythagoras. Now, what they really mean is probably the angle. But the thing about it is that those maths were already in existence within the story we're told. Now, I'm not saying they were, because he didn't obviously make a measurement, but I'm saying that they were already in existence by their timeline. But I'm not going to argue because it's all nonsense and no radius value is a measure.
Exactly. We're arguing about the claimed stories of the past. Yeah, we could argue and hash out what they've claimed is in the story all day long. It's all nonsense, exactly. You know, their measurement, even if I dissect how the Al-Biruni story plays out and whether he's got a presupposition based on the fact that it's already been measured, he's going out and his story doesn't involve the presupposition beyond a spherical presupposition, he's still doing the measurement. We could argue about that all day. However, the horizon's not physical. It's all nonsense. Doesn't matter how the story plays out.
Let's not forget that their side tells us Al-Biruni had no idea of refraction. And then come to today, fast forward, Andrew Thomas Young says all his refraction calculations were done on a flat plane. But he says there it's not flat, back to the presupposition. So now we need to take everything I ever found out about refractions on the flat plane, which is the only way I could calculate them. And now we're going to take some geometric considerations.
Yeah, and refraction geometric considerations are 7/6 of the radius value in standard form. That's called terrestrial refraction, otherwise known as standard refraction, at 7/6 of the radius. Well, geometric considerations are to assume that we have light bending through sphere-shaped air. So the assumption is that light bends at a rate of the radius derived thereof because of sphere-shaped air assumptions and light bending through that sphere-shaped air. That's what they assume. There's a whole bunch of presuppositions, but they ultimately all need R. They all need the radius value, and we've debunked it.
Yeah, even if you look at Eratosthenes, what he really did was basically lay out the foundations of a flat diameter measurement that would have worked out about just around under 25,000 miles. But the claim is that if he existed and did that, the claim is that he then pre-assumed that the light from the sun comes in parallel rays, and that allowed him to, that allowed him to turn the 25,000. What would be 25,000 miles flat diameter into a 25,000 mile circumference of a globe.
Yeah, Arwin likes to do it at the beginning of each show when we get to any evidence of. I think he uses it for axial rotation, and it's like, yeah. I can. No, it is R. Arwin says that you can get R by way of the averaged movements of the sun, giving him a equator line.
Yeah, you can pre-assume that sun is going around a circle of 25,000 miles. Whereas that was not what Al-Biruni did. He pre-assumed, or he didn't as not Al-Biruni, sorry, Eratosthenes was laid out the basis for about a 25,000 mile flat diameter, which would fit on the longitude lines from one side to the other, basically, on an AE map or some Gleason's map kind of thing.
Yeah, he's taking the seasonal averages of where the sun move above your head, right, at various geographical positions. And he's saying, here's the midpoint average. But that midpoint average of what the sun does above my head is actually me on the outside edge of a spherical surface. So I'm pointing out, if you were looking at a North Pole vertical view of the globe, then his measurement is with him standing at 90 degrees to that position on the equator in his presupposition. So instead of it being, oh, well, the sun moves across my head and the average of where it moves across my head across these seasons is across that line, which is there when I look down. But I'm not actually looking down. Down is now 90 degrees to an axis on a surface that's spherical. And I'm pointing out at the side, and so is the sun, with parallel light rays coming in towards it. That's the assumption he then makes.
But he thought he was measuring curvature at that point, so I don't. It's hard to fault him.
I don't know. Assuming you're on the outside edge of a sphere when you take the averages. Sorry, we're not talking about Eratosthenes anymore, but I'm just talking about the equator.
Are we
Well,
serious?
the
We
apparent
can't fault him. He's making assumptions, and we can't fault him.
Well, we're not even sure he made those assumptions. This story has so many twists and turns. He's supposed to be, Brian, back me up with what you know, stadia, the distance measurement of the time, closely said today to be near 500 miles by, authorities that talk about Eratosthenes. So how in the world could he, if you follow the stories, as I said in the pre-show, it says that he measured how the sun was inside the well in Cyan, so directly overhead, in March 21st, 22nd. Okay. And then he walked to Alexandria because it was close. Well, how can you do that in the same day if it's 500 miles? So that's just one story about him. The other story about him is that he waited a year, went to Alexandria the same time next year, the following year, and said, I'll measure it now because I know over there it's directly over in the well. Now, that story is out there too. And then, of course, there's others in between that. But how can the story not be consistent? Why are they making this stuff up?
Well, if there ever was,
record keeping.
yeah, if there ever was an Eratosthenes and he did anything, whatever he did, we'll never ever get to actually find out, because they've taken something that, if it was part of history, and they've convoluted it and twisted it to suit a narrative. So it's hard to know. I know that it's stadia. I think, like you said, 500 miles for a stadia, whereas I read 600 miles, because they don't even know really what. Now, so I can't argue that you're wrong, because I have no idea. Supposedly they don't really know what a stadia was. Because
Does it even matter either way? 500, 600 miles. The man walked back in that day, what, in his wooden sandals, and even if he was walking barefooted, can anybody do that? The story doesn't sound logical or kind of common sense. And when you hear stories like that in history that you cannot validate, we shouldn't even put them into our mind for a belief system.
Well, I heard, like I think was saying, Stacey, there's different stories. I read a different story that there was someone else in the other location recording what was going on, this kind of stuff. But I mean, for any of it, for anything that happened, for any of it to be spheric in their final calculation, They have to pre-assume that the sunlight comes in parallel rays. So that's the end of all their claims.
Uh-oh.
It's like saying, for my claim to be correct and everything I'm saying to be correct, water cannot be wet. You know, that's the
How
end of
long
that.
did he study the sun to verify that?
Well, who knows if he studied the sun at all? He probably just did some kind of a flat measurement or the basis of a flat measurement, and someone twisted it afterwards.
Brian, I hate being asked, but water can't be wet.
It can't be wet. Water itself, well, no, because water is wet.
Yeah, no, something gets wet with water. So
that's true. Yeah, I'm wrong. But that means that whatever claim I had or whatever my idea was correct then.
There goes just salvage it and say, well, words don't mean anything, so don't worry about it.
With Aristophanes, 10th century that you've mentioned, that the reality is it's impossible to transfer local time back then. So whether you did it a year later, you still don't know what time it is when it's overhead, in the other place. Whether you go there a year later and guess. So the only way you can do is already to have a pre-assumed model to calculate when you should check the well in the second position. So you've already got to have your ball model to calculate the time it would be there for you to go there and check it to confirm your model. And that's what all these things are for. They're very useful if you want to confirm a presupposition. Yeah, but they're of absolutely no use if you actually want to find out the nature of reality.
Right, do you want to know what the modern equivalent of that is? It's Jodrell Bank and JPL, Bob from JPL coming in and saying, yeah, when we got the radar bounce off Venus, it came in at the exact time we would expect it to come in. Whatever they call it, it's, let's say 7 minutes. Here's the signal that we've got back. And look, this bit of interference in that signal is the return. They go, is it? Yeah, definitely. And you go, okay. So then you start arguing about whether or not they've seen a return signal in that and whether or not that is a return signal. It's like, hold on. Where are they looking in time frame terms for a return signal? Well, they're looking for the return signal within a time frame that's based on an R value, that's based on Venus being the same size as Earth. It's based on the distance to the sun being extrapolated out from Kepler's third law. All of those assumptions are already in place to give them the time to look for the signal that's going to be coming back according to them. That's what they say it's going to be. So that's where they're going to be looking. Well, the timings are all based on the presuppositions. So it's not confirming anything. It's a complete joke. It's just a convoluted gaggle screw way of getting to a claim to be measurement when you've based everything you've done prior to that on presupposition.
Is that rebounding off the black body? We're talking there, Nathan. Is that rebounding off of a black body they're talking about there?
Yes. Again, that can be overcoming the narrative. That's not a problem.
Another
Well, I have a question about this.
Hold on, just 1 second. Go ahead, Neil.
That was me.
No, I know, but Neil was trying to get something in before you asked.
No, that was me. That was me saying it's another contradiction within their claim, within their own claim.
Well, maybe it wasn't me.
Yeah, go on, Neil. We'll try third time's charm.
I said it confirms their nonsense. That's what it does. In their mind, everything's okay. It's all right to have a pre-assumed radius. Come on.
It was past tense. Black swan. You know, I no longer say in R you trust. In other words, pointing out that they just assume their outcome, and that's good enough for them. Begging the question, fallacy's better than nothing, Tim Mosman. Right? Well, no. That used to fly until Black Swan came along, and now we just say, no, you haven't got R anymore. You can't trust in R. You haven't got it. You can't measure it. Who was it from Discord? Go ahead, whoever that was.
Oh, that was me. So people were saying, like, they claim they can measure the distance to the sun by bouncing. Is it bouncing radar off of it that they, or what was it they say they bounce?
I think it's radar, yeah.
So if they can't bounce radar off of it, like they say, because it's supposedly gas or a black body, then how do we use Doppler radar to detect clouds, because aren't clouds gas?
They aren't black bodies, though. They're made up of other things besides gas.
Well, clouds technically are condensed water vapor, so they're not gas anymore.
Okay.
The point I was making is they don't, clouds don't do this, but the sun in their model is described as a black body, so it wouldn't have a rebound effect. It would just be absorbed. You can bounce stuff off clouds.
Hope that answers your question. My point was moreover that when they get the timings for when they assume they're going to get a return signal, those timings are based on presuppositions of R values and distances that have been derived from assumptions of Venus being the same size as Earth. All of those things are in place to give you time to look for the return signal. And then they argue about whether or not they saw it in that little time period. It's like, well, the time period itself is all based on presupposition.
Can't they argue that the sun is like a cloud, as in like it's hydrogen or it's helium or whatever they claim it is, hydrogen, but it also has the properties that make a cloud bounceable, like some sort of like micro solids in it?
Yes, I'm going to say, and then hopefully be completely shot down by the rest of the people on the panel. Yeah, you can do whatever you like in the model.
This is the point I was making. You can do whatever you like, but they've already defined within their model that the sun is a black body. That's the contradiction I'm saying. It's not my claim. I'm not saying it's a black body. They say within their model that that's what it is. And then they go off to say, but we're going to bounce something off it. Let's bounce a bit of radar off it. You know, that's the contradiction. And then they only look in the area as Nathan describes, and then no one can find it other than a magic man called Bob, or whether he's the only mug that you could get that would actually say, oh, it must be there, because everyone else had a bit of integrity. I don't know which, but it's not much evidence, really.
Hope that answers your question.
What they do is they claim that they can bounce a signal off of the sun, and the sun is condensed plasma, and their support for this is that they can bounce a signal off the sun. So their support for bouncing signals off of plasma is that they can bounce a signal off the sun. If you that's circular reasoning again, I had that argument one time with Robert's son once that where he was claiming to know what the sun was, and his only support for being able to bounce a signal off a plasma, which was the claim he was making concerning the sun, was that they bounce signals off the sun. This was the claim. So it's circular. It backs itself up in a circular fashion. So it's a faulty logic.
But are they bouncing something off of it in actuality? Like, I know that they need the radius value to calculate the speed of light, but when they're firing at the sun and something's bouncing back, like potentially couldn't they actually measure it if something is bouncing back?
Yeah, but if you read the account that you got from Jodrell Bank, you've got an account of the people there saying, we don't see anything, we don't really think we've got anything back. And then suddenly a guy from JPL steps in and goes, I can see it, here it is. And then they have several days of discussion about back and forth whether or not they agree with the guy from JPL. And then it says in the documentation, the guy from JPL convinced them that they did see it. So they did, and then they reported it.
They're going, yes, my king, your new clothes look glorious. You know, yeah, it's a completely con, isn't it? It's the old fairy tale where you're convincing the king's new clothes are magnificent, and he stood there naked, and that's the reality. There was no data in there. He was naked.
But the problem is you have to.
So in the
go on.
In the documentation from this claim, there's a back and forth about them. Like one side's saying there's nothing coming back, and then one person's saying yes there is, and then they're all agreeing with the one guy.
Yeah, it's not phrased that way. The way it's phrased is, we struggle to see a return signal, and we obviously went to an external source, JPL, and he felt that he could see it, but we weren't convinced. But after many discussions, we were convinced by the guy from JPL. That's how it's phrased. I'll have to dig out the document for you. Anthony Riley's got a copy of it somewhere. But it's a very interesting read. You know, they're ultimately in this report reporting on this finding. So the overall report tone is to say, here's what we've found. We have found something. Now, at first, we didn't think we'd found it. But then we were helped out from Bob from JPL, and then we knew we'd found it. Even though we didn't really think we'd found it, and we had to discuss it quite a lot because we weren't convinced. But then we were convinced. And now here's our report on it. That's how it goes.
I see that unicorn. Don't you see it?
Well,
I'm not convinced,
the thing I said,
but if I had a unicorn expert come down to tell me that that smudge on a picture that I was looking at was actually a unicorn, and then we debated it for several days, and he was very convincing in his story about how it was definitely a unicorn, and then I reported on how I'd been convinced, I'd probably write it exactly how it happened, which is what they did. We weren't convinced, then we were convinced.
well, if you don't know what the sun is, right, if you don't know what something is, what it's made of, or its actual size, then how can you be sure that you're bouncing it off of that?
But they've got spectrometropoloscopy. So, yeah.
Philosophy.
Chocoloscopy. Spectrochocoloscopy. Get it right.
Well, like
Yeah.
with echolocation, doesn't that?
Yeah.
With echolocation, doesn't that only work if you know the medium in which you're echolocating through?
It's just semantics.
Well, no, what I'm saying is if we don't know the medium that the sun is within, then how do we know that even if we have the right timing, whatever they believe that is, that it's not, the light isn't being affected by that medium?
Well, the two things I would say as a sphere believer is it just works and then point you in the direction of the calculations that got you to that conclusion for the timing, ignoring your question altogether. That would be probably my tack that I take as a glober. Would that satisfy you?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah, and I could say, yeah, because, John, the wheel works. We know the wheel works. So if it works, something works. Just move on.
Well, I don't know how a radar gun works, but like the police, when you're driving your car, the police can determine your distance with the radar gun and your speed. So isn't there like a big radar gun they can use to like bounce? Like, because if we're in a container, it has to be solid. Can't they bounce the
Can't
radar
you
off
get
the
a
container?
special paint to put on your car that stops the radar rebounding? It's like a black paint, I think, isn't it? That you can put on.
Yeah, there is that.
Well,
but couldn't you potentially find the distance to the container?
We're moving out. We're moving away from John's question, and I want to get back onto it. Right? He's saying if you don't know the medium, how are you supposed to do? He said echolocation, but if you don't know what it's traversing, how are you supposed to do the measurement? That's his overriding question, right? I segued away, and you've dutifully all followed suit, which isn't exactly where I was hoping that would go. I was just making a point. So, well, the medium, if you start discussing that, John, the father of a stolen child, John, is a natural law violation in the first instance. So they claim to be measuring a burning ball of gas in a sky vacuum. So you're saying, well, we don't know what that second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum actually is. Yeah, that's correct. But they ultimately assume it's a second law of thermodynamics sky vacuum. So they claim that they do know. And they just say it was a sky vacuum at 10 to the minus 17 torr. So they do know. It's just brushed past the natural law violation bit.
Right, but that makes the whole claim faulty that you can get anything from the timings, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Did you not hear me say brush past the second law of thermodynamics violation that ultimately destroys the entire claim? I as a globe believer, or anti-flat earther, let's get that right also, will brush past the second law of thermodynamics violation claim that you're measuring lights that are burning ball of gases in a sky vacuum in violation of natural law, and just say we know it's a sky vacuum. Brush past it. What's wrong with that?
You guys just made up natural laws. No such thing.
They don't apply to Earth. Exactly, chocolate. Second law of thermodynamics does not apply to the Earth. And by Earth, I mean heliocentric model, I'm assuming that stands in violation of natural law, therefore it doesn't apply to the model that I'm going to call Earth. And just not mention that when I say Earth, I mean the reified model that is heliocentric. I just won't mention that.
I'm sorry, I didn't know we were being silly. My bad. My bad.
Yeah, we're just talking about what happens in models, right? Now, in my model, yeah, it doesn't matter if you decide that outside of that natural law violation that is a sky vacuum, you've got archons or planets. It doesn't matter. It's all the same bullshit. It's all nonsense. Because the area they're claiming all these lights in the sky that they're bouncing stuff off, measuring, travelling to, whatever it is they're claiming about them, they haven't got a clue. But nonetheless, they make plenty of claims about them. And when they do, they're claiming those things are in a sky vacuum. Ultimately, bunk from the outset.
But for us flat earthers, we should be able to bounce a signal off the top of the container and figure that out, shouldn't we?
Maybe. Have you tried?
I'd like to. That'd be awesome.
You should. These are the things that excite me the most. Yeah, a proactive person that wants to actually know what's what. Yeah, man. That's why it's wonderful. Which is better, saying, oh, we already know it's a sky vacuum in violation of natural law, let's move on with our day, or going, I wonder what it actually is. I wonder how I could find out. I might be the one to do so. Isn't that amazing? I think so.
The Globers find it more accelerating or accelerating to sit around and watch or listen to Neil Smoking the Grass Tyson talk about magical boundaries and magical speeds and shit like that. That's way more exciting than actually trying to figure it out for yourself, if you could.
Or watch cock rockets go up into the sky and just imagine that they're travelling into a second law of thermodynamics violation, and because you've seen a giant penis travel upwards, that means the sky is a vacuum. It's that sort of non sequitur they can cling on to also.
Yeah.
By the way, what was the number on that magical speed again?
He never gave one. It's just magical.
I was going to say, you don't assign a speed to magic. You ever seen, is it The Illusionist or is it The Prestige? I forget which. They show how the cage with a bird in it is actually part of a collapsible table.
Prestige, yeah.
Prestige. So he pushes on the cage and it basically kills the bird but forces it into the table. Now, meanwhile, he's got a second bird, right? And if you were to qualify, knowing how the trick works, what's the speed that the bird went from the cage to his hand when he reveals the prestige of the trick, which is the bird still here? How fast did it go? How fast did the bird go from the cage to his hand? It's magic, right? It's nonsensical to give it a speed. Likewise, in the heliocentric world of bullshit and magic, you don't actually give it a speed. That's why he used the word magic.
Their magic speed is 666.
It's an often occurring number in their model. I will give you that.
All right, it's just that the word speed naturally invokes a number, right? But I guess the magical negates that.
Yeah. You know, qualification for magic isn't required if you're in a heliocentric model. What causes it? Well, magic. It's like in The Simpsons when they're talking to Xena and the geeks are in the audience asking her about plot holes. And she's like, magic elf did it. Oh, right, okay. That fixes that plot hole. Excellent, very pleased. What's that? Magic speed? Oh, okay. That's how it happened. Okay, great. Works a charm.
Yeah.
Any more for any more?
I almost had something with the magic speed and the baseball bat.
Look, your criminal history is none of our business. Any more for any more?
I'm speaking with Rachie recently. Slight change of topic, because she had some videos that are coming out. She brought out a video about how the moon, the phases of the moon, can't work for an observer on a globe. And she brought out a lot of videos, short videos recently. Other ones about Einstein and that. She's really pulling that apart. And the ballers, all they were coming back to her with was, the moon has to be far enough away, and this diagram, and she was using an official diagram, that's not shown at the scale, and it's all different when the scale is different, and it all works, this kind of nonsense. They got nothing, right? She was just pointing out some obvious problems with their moon phase thing. And I can probably say this here because I think she may be making another video about this, so I hope I'm not leaving the cat out of the bag here or anything. But I was speaking to her saying that the moon, right, a new moon, right, should be a black disk in the sky, right? Now, I think we've discussed some of this before as well, but it's not. It just completely disappears. And it's a big problem for there. And she was like, I never thought of that, she said. And it just disappears completely out of the sky. Right? It's just not there. There's not.
Yeah, we were talking about that years ago. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell is this big rock? It
Yeah.
just disappears out of the sky for 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be gone. Like there should be just a black disc in the sky. Like basically a black disc thing or black circular thing, blocking things. And she had never thought of that. It's just something that I thought she never had about it. And she was like, that makes total sense. And I sent a video in Master Beta War, and it's a flat earther showing how basically it was showing an eclipse, solar eclipse, doing a demonstration of one, and about how the sun and moon would have to be of equal size for it to work as it does. But what he does show is he shows a video of the actual solar eclipse. Now, when there is a solar eclipse, you don't get to see the direct sunlight. So on the side of the moon, from your observer side of the moon, there was no sunlight on that moon. Yet that moon is blocking the sun. So you're seeing a black disk that's blocking the lights behind it, the big light, the sun, right? So at new moon, why don't we see that? Why aren't we seeing this black disk that we're seeing in these eclipses at new moon blocking all these stars throughout the night?
This got debated about a month ago, and the guy that we were debating with said, I'm not saying you cannot see it, therefore it's not a positive claim. So in other words, he's claiming that you can see 0.8% of the moon at new moon. Now that 0.8% cannot be seen. Nobody can show it you. But obviously in the heliocentric model, it requires to still be there. It's a physical rock in the sky vacuum. But it doesn't appear. We can't see it, even though you should see 0.8% of it that you cannot see and cannot photograph and isn't blocking anything in the sky. So big shout out to Rachie00000 if you want to look up her channel name. I left a comment on her video recently about begging the question fallacy that involves hemispheres and observations of lights in the sky. She was detailing anti-clockwise and clockwise rotation in false dichotomy with flat Earth and globe Earth models and presuppositions of hemispheres and all that good stuff. So I left her a fairly lengthy comment, which she was very polite and thanked me for, which is unusual. So thank you very much. I didn't expect a response from you, Rachie, but thank you very much for doing so anyway. It doesn't often happen.
I have a question. It's a little off topic. If you guys got time.
As long as it's
I
about...
just want to say one last thing on this before that. Thing.
Yeah. If you let Brian just summarise his point, and then we'll move over to whatever you're talking about. As long as it's not about man milk. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. Do we see 0.08% of the sun, of the moon, when, like, their claim is that what causes new moon is that there is no direct sunlight on it because the globe Earth is in the way. Now, there's no direct sunlight on the moon during a total solar eclipse because all the light has been blocked by the other side of the moon in their heliocentric model. Well, that's what's happening. But from a heliocentric point of view, it's the same exact thing as happening to the moon when it's at new moon in their model, because the globe Earth is blocking the light from the sun. So if we can see a black disk in the sky at a total solar eclipse, then we should see this black disk within their model. That black disk should be there at the end of every month.
Correct.
But there's nothing there.
Exactly. We should see that effect. If they're claiming it's a reflected light from the sun, well, then the absence of which would leave us with an absence of light in that sky position, because it's a great big vast thing blocking all light. Well, you'd still see it once it disappeared if it was what they claim to be, which is a rock in the sky, reflecting light, specular reflections that aren't possible. Nevertheless, who is it from Discord? Just before I do, sorry, was there anything else, Brian?
No, just that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Cool. Go ahead, whoever it was from Discord.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little distracted right now. I'm driving. Okay, sorry. Okay, I asked this on 24/7. I think Monday, and I'd just like to get your guys' view on this. A helium balloon. Why isn't the balloon the medium of the helium? Because it is contained within the solid barrier of the balloon. So what would be the medium for the helium?
What do you mean? The medium is the helium. If you're inside the balloon, if you're a little worm put in the helium balloon with the helium, then the worm is in the medium of helium.
Okay, so why would that make the balloon go up? Because the balloon is within the medium of the air, and the balloon is more dense than the air. The helium is contained within inside that physical barrier. So how is it affecting the medium outside the balloon?
Can I answer that?
Am I making myself clear?
Yeah, it's a good
Yes.
question. Very good question.
Can I answer it, Nathan?
Yeah, feel free.
All right. Yeah, look, how does relative density cause things to move vertically, right? So, yeah, the balloon in itself, it is a dense material. It's obviously a solid. It is much denser than air and helium. But the thing about relative density is it's not just about a material. It's about the material versus the volume, right? So you have a total volume that is locked into the helium balloon because of its solid nature, right? It's stretchable, but it's still a solid piece. So the average density of the combination of the helium locked inside and the material of the balloon, that is the density average that causes it to displace within the medium. Not just the rubber.
Okay, but
Without
here's the problem. Here's the problem, though. You're actually the balloon by itself is already more dense than the air. When you add the helium, you're actually adding more matter to that object. Why would it not be even more dense instead of less dense then?
You displace
because
the
the
air.
volume versus the density ratio goes down. There's more volume, less density in the total volume.
Correct. You've
That's why.
displaced all of the air, or all of the air that was in the limp balloon has been displaced outwards. Yeah? Or the quantity versus the helium is far, far less versus the volume in the expanded balloon with more and more helium pumped into it. The overall density of that container with a thin solid around it is less dense than the air that it's in, therefore it'll go up. None of these things I'll point out to the person asking the question actually answers your question, though.
Right, it doesn't, because the balloon itself it's the only thing that's in the medium of air, because the helium isn't, and the balloon is already more dense. So how can the helium make?
Can I paraphrase? I know what you're asking. Can I paraphrase? What you're asking? What causes it to go up, right?
No, he stated that.
Owen, it's not your question. He can answer his own question. When I ask him if that's what he's saying, he can answer.
Yes, that's basically it.
Right. So you're asking for the cause of entropy.
No, that's.
Yeah, you are.
Trick me here. No,
Yeah.
I'm asking, how is the helium affecting the balloon when it's not even, the helium is not even in the medium of the air to be less dense? I don't think I'm saying it right.
No, it's fine.
Because
It's fine.
the helium,
it's an
the helium
equivalent.
isn't
Okay.
even part of the
I get your point. Hello. Yeah. In the same way, if you've got a ping pong ball that's only got air inside it, and you put it under the water, You could ask the same question, but the same principle would apply. Even though you've got a solid, well, surely the solid's going to be more dense than zinc in the water, right? It's a ping pong ball. It's made of solid. Well, no. Inside that ping pong ball, you've got something that's less dense than the water around it. It's going to force its way up by way of disequilibrium that it's under. It's in disequilibrium. Well, it doesn't matter that you've got a solid shell around that ping pong ball. It's going to want to reach equilibrium, and the same goes for the helium. The helium is going to want to reach equilibrium. So therefore, it's going to displace the air around it and move up. Now, that still, as I said earlier, doesn't answer your question, because your question, which is why I said it's a good question, is for the cause. Why does that happen? What causes that to actually occur? And this displacement is a second-order effect of entropy. It's an entropic effect. Relative density disequilibrium and the return to whence it came, that would be equilibrium, is an entropic effect. And you're asking for the cause of that, which is a brilliant question. I just can't answer it. Neither can anyone else here before anyone tries.
Well, I'm going to try.
Well, go on then.
Because, yeah, I'm going to try because I think I have already answered this before. It's about the structural support of matter. The helium that's within the balloon cannot handle the density of the air outside. So that same helium balloon, if you put it into a vacuum chamber, that same helium balloon will as there's less and less air, when there's more and more air being taken out of that vacuum chamber as the pump is on, that helium balloon will gradually go down to the base of the chamber, because it doesn't have to deal. The weight of the density of the balloon then overcomes the helium that's within it. But in air, the helium, it's like it's getting the helium that's within it can't structurally support the more dense air that's surrounding it. So the helium balloon is then forced up out of the way because it's like a weakness, if you know what I mean. If you think of it as structural weakness, whereas it doesn't have to deal with that.
Okay. What you're doing is you're describing it beautifully. I don't disagree with any of it. You still haven't ascertained the cause of it in your description of it. Good description, though.
Right. I'd like to address an error in thinking that the questionnaire has engaged in, because he thinks that just because there's a shell in between the material on the inside and the material on the outside, that it's not in the medium. Yes, it is. If it is somewhere within the volume of the hole, it is in that medium, even if something else is getting in between. Now, with a helium balloon, the rubber is trying to get down in relation to the helium and in relation to the gas outside, but the helium inside the balloon is trying to go up, and that the force of it going up because of the density disequilibrium overcomes the force of it trying to go down from the rubber, and that's how the combined thing goes up, right? So every material within the medium is doing something. You cannot exclude anything from being in the medium. That never happens.
Again, Arwin, excellent quantitative description of what's occurring, and I commend you. You could expand on it by describing that the greater quantity of helium in a more dense layer, the film that you could have instead of a balloon, could be lead. It's been done by the guys at Mythbusters. You know, take something very, very dense, make it very thin, but it's still got a very high density, and with enough helium, you can still get the helium to proportionally overcome the density of the solid that's surrounding it to keep it in disequilibrium from the air it's in as a medium. All of which is merely just a quantitative description of what's occurring. It still doesn't explain the cause.
Okay, now, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%. I'm just confused as to, I don't know if I'm going to say this right. Again, the helium, it seeks equilibrium, but when it's inside the balloon, there's nothing it has to fight against, like disequilibrium, because it's contained by itself within something. So why is it not already in equilibrium? It doesn't have to fight against the air to seek equilibrium.
Because the balloon...
So what's making it want to go up?
The disequilibrium of the helium itself isn't proportionally enough with the helium balloon's container, the container isn't enough to overcome the helium inside it wanting to become or go up in that direction relative to its density. Again, no matter how many times I try and answer this for you, I'm never going to have within my description of just what's happening. That is what occurs. Helium is less dense and does want to displace whatever it's got below it if it's going to move in that vector. That's what will occur. Now, unless you can overcome that with something more dense, I put it in a wooden box that's completely sealed up with, I don't know, silicon. Unless you can do that and have something that's dense enough to stop it wanting to displace the air around it, even with a container, it will always want to do that. Why does it do that? Why is helium less dense? Why, when low, does it want to find equilibrium up high relative to my vantage point when I watch it do it? I can't give you the answer to that.
Nathan,
I think we're arguing at different questions. To be
Go on,
honest.
Adam.
Nathan, let me ask you a question.
Go on, Ted. You first. Go ahead, Ted.
Okay. All right. Can we look at it from a different viewpoint? Okay. We've all seen the oil tanker container on a railroad track where they take a small vacuum and suck all the air out of the oil tanker, a sealed thing. And then it just collapses on itself from the outside pressure. And can we bring some sense to it by showing the opposite, what happens when you take all the air out?
I was going to even suggest the submarine.
Yeah, do it. That's a good one. Ballast tanks. Good. I don't want to say steal your thunder.
Yeah.
You do it.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, a submarine has a crush depth. So a submarine has to if a submarine goes too far down, it won't be able to come back up. It will get crushed. And that's what's happening with the helium balloon. The helium inside the balloon, it won't be able to sustain it won't be able to constantly sustain the density and pressure around it of the air. That's why eventually the helium, if you tie a helium balloon to something and leave it in your kitchen or your bedroom, that helium will come out because it has the balloon under pressure. But it is the structure that's keeping the balloon in the shape it's in. So that balloon is all tight and pushed out the way due to the helium balloon. But eventually that balloon will collapse if that helium balloon stays. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's about how much pressure it's under. That's not where I thought you were going to go. To expand on what Brian's saying and hopefully put it into, not to be rude, a more digestible example. If you go up to a very, very high altitude, so you're at the top of Everest and you've just happened to have a helium canister and you fill a balloon with a tiny bit of helium. Yeah? Now, for my example, because I'm going to push it to extremes, that small amount of helium will fill the balloon because there's a lower pressure up high. Now, if you then tie that balloon to your backpack and walk all the way down to the bottom of the mountain, where there's much higher pressure, you'll find that the balloon is far more limp when you get to the bottom because it's under a higher pressure. Now, the fact that the balloon, when it's down low, wants to make its way back up to where it was because it's in a greater sense of equilibrium, for want of better words, is easy to explain when you show that it's being more crushed as you go down with less helium in it. Yeah? So in other words, down low, you've got to put a lot more helium in to blow the balloon up and overcome the pressure that it's already experiencing on the outside of the balloon because you've got a far lower density in the amount. When you start up high, you'll see the effect actually transpose before your eyes when you go down to a lower pressure. Hopefully that's a bit more digestible.
Right, and also the density of the balloon itself is going to stay the same, right? So only the gas situation is altered.
No. The density, as the pressure, there'll be a slight change there. But just to address the point. I think what's been the initial question. We're describing pressure effects and variances, but I don't think that's what was being asked. I think we've got the weight of the balloon, and we've got helium separate, and you're struggling to, I think, take out the fact that once we put the helium into the balloon and it's in containment, the helium kind of becomes irrelevant. Its only function when we're looking at it then is that it's the thing that's creating the volume that they're then gonna use, right, to discuss why there is a displacement effect, because it's that volume and the amount of the weight of the air within it, the mass of the air, and that comparison to the atmospheric air, your medium. That's it. You ignore the helium inside at this point because it's not doing anything. It's contained. It's got nothing to do with anything other than within this system, as they've talked about blowing up balloons, it's increased the volume. That increase in the volume reduces the overall density of the containment. So instead of having a balloon, say with a relative density of 5, and it's in the air that's got a 1, because you've increased its volume with the helium, now it's got an overall relative density, the balloon, because it's been stretched by the helium inside, of a half. So it's going to want to displace, and because it's of a lower density, it's going to want to go up. Does that answer your question?
Saying as
no.
As an overall object, the balloon and its density relative to the air, when you pump helium in, lowers the overall density of the balloon itself relative to the air. If you look at that, the balloon in the system, the fact that the thing pumped into it is helium is irrelevant. It's merely the fact that that thing, the balloon, is now a half compared to 1, therefore it's going to want to go up from your vantage point.
Well, the balloon without the helium takes up a lot less volume. But once you put in the helium, then there is a bigger volume creating, which it's not just the density of the air around it, but it's the pressure as well. So when you add in helium into that balloon, if you fill up a helium balloon to the balloon's capacity within, like at sea level, then it's the density of the air that's outside of it is trying to, like, the structure of the helium inside can't take that. But you could call it, I don't know if it could call it weight, but then there's the pressure element as well. As you said, Nathan, when you part fill a helium balloon up high, it'll fill the whole balloon. When you walk down to the bottom of the mountain, that balloon will be crumpled up. So the bigger the volume that you're creating, the more the displacement of the more dense gas that's happening.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I don't like the word structure. In terms of what's going off, at ground level, we've got more collisions on the outside of the balloon. So to get the balloon to inflate, we've got to put more molecules in, more helium, to get it to inflate to the same level. When we're higher up, there's less external collisions squashing the balloon, so we don't need as much. Or if we've got the same amount and we've took it up, the balloon will expand because the relative differential between down collisions crushing and collisions pushing out changes. And that's why the balloon it's collision based.
And that's not involving temperature, right? That we're just talking about pressure at this point, right?
Yeah.
Temperature will vary that.
Yeah, we're just talking about pressure. So you increase the pressure on the helium balloon on the inside and it's got more pressure, but then we've got the pressure of the gas on the outside. So why does the pressure of the helium want to overcome the pressure of the outside pressure on the balloon that's crushing it in? Well, because it's less dense. Yeah, but why does it then do that? Because it's less dense. Well, we don't know.
Well, no,
Right.
that's actually not my question. My question is, how does it even know that it's okay? I'm not.
Because it's clairvoyant.
It's separated from the air that it's less dense than. So why does it have to even seek equilibrium? Because it's not even part of the air. It's separated from it.
No, but the balloon isn't.
Am I making...
But the balloon isn't. So the balloon is the thing that's going to be displacing. You're looking at it as though, well, the helium's now separated from it. Well, it's like, well, yeah, but your system is the balloon itself, and the balloon, when filled with helium, becomes less dense than the air, and therefore wants to displace upwards. The balloon, that was Adam's point that he was trying to clarify it. So you don't just look at it as, well, if I separate helium off from other things, it suddenly doesn't interact with that. Well, no, suddenly the thing that it's in will, as a complete system, you've got balloon and air reacting with each other. The fact that it's contained with helium at that point is irrelevant because the balloon's going to react based purely on how dense it is compared to the medium it's in. And if it's filled with helium and therefore less dense, it's going to want to move away from where it's being squashed downwards and try and make its way up in the same way as a ping pong ball will do the same in a bath if you force it down.
But that's why I stated the term structural support of matter. I mean, gas is still matter. So if you have a children's bouncy castle, when you're bouncing on that bouncy castle, let's just say at a children's birthday party, all the kids are jumping on the bouncy castle. Like that, what's supporting them is not the material, but the gas that's inside.
No,
No, that's wrong. I let you off the hook. Adam,
I would have to completely disagree with you on that.
No. Adam pulled you up on it. I let you off the hook the first time and didn't address you on this. When you say structural support and you're talking about gas, in order for the pressure to provide structural support, you've got to have a membrane. In your bouncy castle example or the balloon example, the membrane is something that you can then press upon to then experience the increased velocity or the increased number of particle collisions on that membrane. But to have you not go straight through the helium with your hand, you've got to have a membrane. So in turn, you've got pressure imparting a force onto the membrane, and that is enough of a force for the membrane to support a greater weight. But ultimately speaking, when you say structural support and you're talking about unbonded gas, it makes no sense.
Well, I have to disagree with you there. And why I'd say that is I can even use the example of the helium balloon within the vacuum chamber. Why does the helium balloon go down in the vacuum chamber? Because it doesn't have to deal with the structure of the gas surrounding the balloon.
There's no structure. There's no structure. There's just not molecules hitting it anymore. There's no structure. They're just individual molecules. At no point do they form a structure.
Yeah, but it's an overall structure, Adam.
No.
No, but all of that has nothing to do with relative density.
It is. The sand becomes concrete.
Volumetric density. It doesn't matter whether it's a vacuum or really filled up or whatever it is. The only thing that matters is the density of the object and the density of the medium, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's correct. But hold on, Brian. But this is where I can make this statement and have it be accurate, because we don't know the cause. This is just semantics. How we verbalize the description and how well we agree on the semantics of our meaning for the term, in this case, structure, is up for debate. It's up for discussion. It's up for the Socratic method to be applied. But it doesn't get us any closer to cause. We might be more eloquent in our descriptions and concise in our descriptions and do away with bad words that we don't think are useful when making our description. But again, it doesn't get us any closer to the cause. Now, the guy saying, oh, I'm not asking for cause, I'm just trying to clarify how something with a structure, a membrane, isn't then separating off a gas from the entire system. Well, no, that isn't how it works. The balloon just becomes the thing in the system then.
Right, there's two things involved in the balloon dynamics. That's a pressure on the inside and the pressure on the outside. They're always pressing, right? Whether it's filled up with anything or nothing, there's pressure on the inside and there's pressure on the outside. And that just always happens. Because it's
Willie, there's
flexible.
three things, Arwen. Don't forget earlier you said the balloon. The balloon, it does have a relationship with what's happening and the rubber and the weight and all that. The gas would act a little bit differently if it was not in the balloon. But it still would move in all directions. In fact.
Well, I wanted to challenge Arwen on that when he said it earlier as well. No, the thing that we're considering is that contained system, which is the helium and the balloon at that point with regards to relative density disequilibrium, which is what's making it move. That's what we're considering. We don't consider the rubber separately. The air around it isn't going, it's not making considerations. It's overall relative density that's making that, and that is combined of the two things together. They don't play a separate component within that analysis of that system.
Right, it's the balloon and its relative density versus the air and its relative density, not the balloon with helium in it versus the air. It's just the balloon and its density.
I would have to disagree that talking about it as structure does not get us closer to the cause. I think it does. Because Adam said I was incorrect when I gave the example of a helium balloon within a vacuum chamber. And he said, no, there's just no air atoms or air molecules bouncing off of the outside of the balloon. But that's my point. The point is, it doesn't have to displace because it doesn't have to. There's nothing around it that is causing it to not be able to support the structure.
Yeah, you guys are saying the same thing. They just don't like the word structure.
Yeah, I know, but
define the word structure.
Because of the nature of gas, which per definition has no structure. That's the point.
Hold on. Hello. Let Brian get to the end of his statement. He's addressing this to Adam anyway.
And then can I address it?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Yeah, the point I'm making is that the air that would normally be around the helium balloon is not there. So it doesn't have to support that density of gas and pressure. So it doesn't need to go up because there's no reason for it to have to do that. It doesn't need to be displaced because there's no reason for it. There's no structural reason for it to have to do that. Whereas when the medium of air is there, there is a reason because the helium will not be able to consistently keep the balloon inflated with that density of air around it. It won't be able to do that. It won't be able to handle it. It won't have the structural support for that air.
So you started that by saying, I'm bringing it back to this by saying, I think we do it because it could give us more understanding. And I think if you consider these things with regards to, instead of like a liquid or a solid where we do have internal lattice structures, which would offer support, if you add that extra detail about gas behavior and consider it as what it is, which is collisions, then you've got that extra detail. But it does take away using the word structure because the inherent behavior of the gas particle means there is no structure. That's not to say it doesn't provide support, but there's no structural support because there's no structure there to provide that.
Exactly. Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, but what is concrete made up of? Only singular grains of sand.
No. No.
Think about it. What is concrete made up of? That's what concrete is made up of.
You know what
Very
concrete, why it is the way it is?
Oh, hold on,
Very condensed. Concrete is made up of very condensed, small pieces.
Respectfully, Mr. Baller, we've gone from the point to you using a concrete analogy.
I'm just but I'm speaking about structure. I mean, I'm talking about structure. Like if I bounce on a bouncy castle, what is it? What's making me bounce?
Right. So what's
the
making
structural support of the membrane.
Owen, it's the third time. Owen, Brian's talking to Adam, and you're getting in between them every time.
Okay, so the structural support, the thing, let's think about it. If I got an elephant and I started bouncing on it, what's adding support to that structure? The only structural support is the bouncy castle. If anything, the air inside is adding resistance, but what that does is actually add increased pressure when you apply additional pressure. So it's actually weakening itself, isn't it? Because you compress, therefore you increase the pressure. So the effect of the gas inside is the thing. It's not the elephant when it lands on it that makes the bouncy castle burst. It's the gas inside being forced into even more pressure. Yeah. Because of that, so there's no structural support from it. It's just the effect of containment.
Well, I would have to disagree with that because the elephant could lie on the bouncy castle and the bouncy castle might stay intact. It depends on the membrane. Depends on what the membrane is made of.
Yeah, but we're talking about the gas. So without the bouncy castle, the elephant, what can it do with the gas that was there? Yeah. It requires containment, and then we're no longer discussing gas behavior with regards to support of that elephant. It's got nothing to do with it. We're talking about the effects of gas pressure and it being contained and how much tolerance there is within the container, and you have to take into account the amount of pressure and the force you apply to that container.
Yeah, but what I'm missing is that you're viewing, yes, gas, right, as a description, right, in the molecular model is a lot of tiny, tiny individual entities, right? But under pressure, they create structure.
Under great pressure, they turn into a semi-fluid where because they've got no intermolecular spaces, but not under that.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the phase change. I'm talking about
just on increased pressures. Then no. All you do is is decrease the volume, therefore increasing the collision rate because there's less space for them to move in before another collision happens. You've not changed anything other than reduce the spaces. There's still no support. They're moving at the same speed, but because there's less space, they're hitting each other more. That's why that bag feels harder, but it's not. Just more collisions.
But but what if I bounce on a bouncy castle, right? What causes the bounce?
The membrane.
No, the membrane doesn't cause the bounce because I can have the membrane without anything and it won't bounce.
No, it's the pressure. He's just explained it. It's the pressure on the membrane. So without the membrane, you go straight through the air and it wouldn't have developed pressure. So what you're detailing is container behavior.
Yes.
Yeah,
structural support is stretchability, right? To support. In architecture, structural support is all about the ability to carry weight, to stretch apart and still maintain rigidity, right? That's structural support. To suggest gas has that in any way is kind of absurd.
Well, it does have. Even within our own bodies, we have a certain amount of gas within our bloodstream and everything else.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say
okay. I can deal with this. Hold on, Adam. Sorry. Let me just try and make an example to Brian. So in terms of trying to make Adam's point a bit more concise, we're going to have the same bouncy castle example, but this time you're going to be on the other side of the membrane. In other words, you're going to be inside the container, experiencing the higher pressure that the container's also experiencing. What support, given that you're at the higher pressure, does the air provide you when you're inside the container with the pressure? Is there any more structural support for you?
What do you mean?
You climb inside
I'm within a helium balloon.
You climb inside the bouncy castle before they air it up. They then add the pressure, and you lie on the bottom and watch the kids jump up and down above you. Are you given any structural support? Given that you're inside the balloon at the higher pressure, and it's obviously going to give structure, because it's higher pressure, right? That's your argument.
Well, am I personally going to have more structural support? I mean, I don't understand.
You're inside the bouncy castle. You're saying that the higher pressure offers more structural support. And if you jump on the bouncy castle, you've got more structural support because it's under higher pressure. And I'm saying, well, you can still be under that higher pressure if you get inside the bouncy castle with the increased pressure, but without the membrane. But then you're not experiencing any more structural support. You still fall through the air if you jump and try and bounce because you're inside it. You go, right, I'm going to jump. There's air pressure here. It's offering more structural support. You still face plant into the ground.
Yes, but it's that's down to my density and weight. That's what it causes. That it can't support me as just gas.
So you need the membrane. That's right. So indeed.
So it needs the membrane. Yeah. In that example, it needs the membrane.
So the structural support you're describing only comes from the membrane. Now, in terms of how you can acquire the extra increased pressure, well, you're going to need a container to do that. But the container and how it behaves is irrelevant to how you will behave in that medium at higher pressure, because the higher pressure itself isn't providing any support. It's the container that's going to provide support.
Well, have you seen the video I showed before showing carbon dioxide coming out of the ground? And there's a guy, it's in a country in Africa, I think it was Uganda, and there was a guy there, he was some kind of a specialist, and he sent a load of smoke bombs into it, and all the smoke sat on top of the carbon dioxide. So you could clearly see that this smoke was being supported by the carbon dioxide underneath. He was just showing the villagers where it was. It was just there was this kind of little pocket that where it was coming out, and it was becoming because there was a little there was like a lake, not a lake, but a lake.
It's okay. It's okay.
Lake
Brian.
of carbon.
Brian.
Hang on 1 second.
I understand the example. What's your point, though?
My point is that the smoke was able to sit on top of the carbon dioxide.
Okay. Temporarily. Stop.
Temporarily, yes. Temporarily, it was able to sit on top of it, on top of the carbon dioxide.
Right. Okay.
While there was
Thank
a little
you.
bit of concentration there.
Yes, I understand that. So what you're saying is there's enough concentration of the dense gas that's currently been highly concentrated because it's been produced there at ground level. It's been pumped out of the ground and there's a high concentration of carbon dioxide. So there's enough density and enough gas collisions in that concentration at that moment to have any smoke at a lesser density not penetrate. In other words, more likely to not find a hole between the dense gas, but in fact just collide with a gas. But that isn't to say that some of the smoke doesn't find its way through a hole, because it will. There will still be inherently gaps between the carbon dioxide. And therefore, while you're saying it's providing structural support, au contraire, there is definitely going to be smoke that's penetrating that carbon dioxide, without question, because there's gaps in it. Because there's no structural support, it will succumb to entropy. And you can measure it with proportional rates according to how much time elapses. So the more time that elapses, the more the smoke will find the holes between the structures that don't exist in your example. There are no structures, hence the entropic effect of diffusion occurs.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I'm not saying that entropy won't take place. But the point I'm making is under concentration, there is an example where a gas was supporting the majority, because I couldn't see any smoke going into it. But I'm sure that there was. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah, okay. I get it. But okay.
But
now just
the point
just
I'm making is that
I know the point. Please. I've listened. Please. Yeah, you're supposed to be humouring me now. I've heard it all. Right, I've heard the back and forth. By comparison, Brian, is there ever a circumstance where you have the bouncy castle and you've got 100 children on them, but one of them falls through the membrane? Because you're like, well, it kind of nearly supports all of it. So it's the same. Well, by comparison, so then occasionally a kid falls through the bouncy castle? Because it doesn't support all of them, right? To make it the same by comparison.
No, but I understand what you're saying. That there is, because the smoke particulates and because of the atoms, as it's described, of carbon dioxide, because they are singular entities, that when there is anywhere for one of those smoke particulates to go, it'll go there. Yes, I understand that. Gas is different than liquids and solids. I understand that, and different again from plasma. But in a lot of ways. But the point I'm making is under concentration, one gas can support another gas. Even if smoke is not technically a gas, one gas can't support another gas.
That's wrong.
Under concentration.
That's just simply wrong, though, because if you say that in a brazen statement, it would be to suggest that even though one kid occasionally falls through the hole in the bouncy castle, it's perfectly capable of supporting all the kids. So let's say you get a pump that's 10 times stronger than normal for your bouncy castle, because the bit that you bounce on's got 5 holes in it. And you go to the parent and say, look, it pretty much supports nearly all of them all the time. It's perfectly acceptable to say that it supports them. And they go, well, what about the kids that occasionally fall through? And you go, well, it's most of the time it's supporting them. Well, likewise, with the example with CO2, what about that gas particle that wasn't supported because it didn't collide with the CO2 particle? The smoke that didn't hit one that went through. Well, it wasn't supported. So to say, well, the smoke's supported, well, what about the one that wasn't? As soon as it's true of one, and over time true of all of them, it's not true at all to say that they're supported. Does that make sense? Before you answer, go on, Brian, go on. Sorry, it's unfair of me to say don't answer. Go ahead.
You're kind of splitting hairs with it, though, Nathan. It's like we see in the video the smoke being sitting on top of the carbon dioxide. So you can say as a whole that smoke is being supported
Okay.
by the carbon dioxide.
Okay. So, parent.
Is this
Look, you
sublimating?
don't. Hold on, Adam. I want to make the joke. So, parent, you can't even see the kids that have sunk through the holes. All you can see is the ones that are bouncing happily. So, on the whole, it's supported, right, Brian?
No, because they're two different scenarios, Nathan. Because in one you have a solid, and in another you don't.
Well, one's got really? So one's got structure, and the other doesn't. Yeah, that's Adam's
I think
point.
the other does.
No,
the
one
other
has
does
no
have
structure.
structure because it's sublimating, isn't it? With dry ice, are we talking here? Carbon dioxide, like pumping out at pressure, where it's partially liquid.
Well, I'm speaking about the video I shared before, where it shows the carbon dioxide coming out of the ground. It's in a natural. It's carbon dioxide coming out of the ground. It was in this village, in Africa, and this guy was showing the villagers where the carbon dioxide is by pumping smoke out, and that smoke sat on top of the carbon dioxide. Because he was just showing the villagers how dangerous it was. They didn't realize what was there and why people were getting sick or were dying. Two kids had died or something like that. So he was showing them what it was that was causing that.
So that's a sulfur hexafluoride thing, isn't it? Because it's pumping out. Yeah, I can keep that sulfur hexafluoride tank floating the aluminium balloon if I keep adding pressure to it. Yeah, because that's where else can it go other than maintain that volume for that volume to then dissipate? It has to come out at some point. That's where you're going to be able to float stuff on top, not because it's adding any support, but as soon as it's pissing off, it's being replaced by more of the same.
Well,
but support without the membrane.
No, but but you take the membrane that makes up children's bouncy castle, and you chop it up into a billion pieces. What good is it then? No good because it's not concentrated.
That was my argument.
Yeah, but you're making my argument by talking about concentration.
Right.
May I make a point?
Very quickly, and then I'm going to give the guy who asked this question literally mad props. But go ahead, John.
I was just going to say that, well, you could look at it the other way and say that the air above the smoke is using the force of up to keep the smoke below it. And the structure of that, right?
Yeah, you could argue from incredulity and farcical nonsense by saying that it's reverse gravity. You could do that.
Yeah. Well, no, but that's where we're at.
I'd sort of look at it on the level of gas behavior.
Sorry, Brian and Arwin. Adam's going to get the last word. Then I'm going to ask this guy to say a word or two, just as I thank him.
Hang on. I got the video in Master B at the 45-second mark, the one Brian's talking about. That's it.
Okay.
Excellent, Dan.
Okay, it's playing.
It's still all temporary,
Yeah.
you know.
Go to the 45-second mark.
Is it still structural support if it cannot ever be made to last without some form of a membrane, right? Is it still structural support, or is it just a early stage of an entropy situation?
Yeah, but maybe
this is just exactly what I've described happening.
Yes, I paused it on the frame. Go ahead, Adam. You're right on cue to talk about what you're about to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, what we've got here is it dissipating over the top. Look at what's happening. There's gas coming out. If you think about it, instead of structural support in terms of individual molecules, there's a rock of them coming up constantly in one direction, up out of the ground. What we have above it is the air, and that's just behaving in all random directions. Now, some of those random directions will be down and interact with that accumulated mass. Some of them will try and penetrate, but because there's stuff thrusting up, they will force the gas away because there's a million more collisions going up than going down. Now, whatever gas is coming out, that effect, if you put smoke on the top, will happen. But look, when you get away from the area of concentration where the production is, how the gas and the CO2 interact. Pretty soon, by the edge of the circle where all people are standing, the safe area, the gas has dissipated.
Exactly, an entropic effect. Who was the guy who brought this subject up in the first place? Because it was a cracking question.
It's me, Scrat.
I just wanted to give you props. Excellent question.
I'm sorry. What do you mean props?
Saying good job. Excellent question.
Oh,
Thank you
okay,
for asking it. It was excellent. And it's also my note. Now I've got acknowledgement from you to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.